49-year-old unidentified man went berserk last night.
Where does she get her view of the world?
Shotgun. 14 people are dead, including 3
Who will be her
children.
role models?
Never been a better time to buy.
What values will she have? Whose child is she? Yours or the network's? Take back your children.
Your living room is the factory. The product being manufactured is you.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
6,919,377,000 of us live on this tiny planet, and only a few of us can see the connections. The patterns, mathematical in design, are hidden in plain sight. Just have to know where to look.
As the world moves further, day by day, month by month, and year to year, there are events unfolding all according to a master plan, or the Great Work, as it's referred to in many occult practices, such as Hermeticism, Freemasonry, and Thelemic mysticism. It is also referred to as the magnum opus, which can be literally defined as being the Creator's best work, or masterpiece. It is quite surprising that a majority of the public are still unaware of this fact, and it is equally as surprising that many people still do not believe that there are secret societies and organizations that carry out their practices and beliefs behind closed doors, away from public scrutiny. It is quite common that when someone mentions the words Illuminati, New World Order, Freemasons, and Bilderbergers, they are automatically assumed to be a conspiracy theorist or a Mad Hatter, and are not taken seriously. This is in part due to the fact that many people are still unaware about these groups' presence and influence on the world, and perhaps psychologically it is because it instills hopelessness, despair, and fear within them. Instinctively, when a normal individual is presented in a threatening situation, they must remove themselves from the problem to avoid it from inflicting harm upon them. An example of this can be understood in the event of a shark on a beach. Once the person is aware of the danger, they do not enter the water to avoid being bit by the shark. It is for this exact reason we also look both ways before crossing the road. In order to defeat a problem, we have to first understand the problem, and then we are able to overcome it. It takes the initial knowledge or enlightening to be able to surpass any problem we face in our lives. However, it is quite saddening and unfortunate that many people would rather stay in the water or lay down on the railway tracks while a train is approaching when it comes to dealing with the corruption of our lives, planet, and nearly all aspects of nature as we know it in today's day and age. This documentary was made in an attempt to remove the blindfold and make the viewer aware of the problems we face as a society, and to explain the history of this corruption and provide key points and information which is encouraged to be studied further. Knowledge is very powerful and is an effective tool used to conquer all struggles which have happened and will happen throughout history. It's time to stare into the eyes of the Illuminati.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
And they manipulate our history books. The history books are not true. It's a lie. That's right, Michael. The history books are lying. That's right. You need to know that. You must know that.
August 16th, you get a visit from some authorities. And who were these authorities?
Very specifically, originally it was 2 FBI agents who I spoke to for several minutes very candidly.
And what did they say?
Well, they said they were concerned.
Did they say, hey, we have a search warrant, sir?
Oh, no, nothing of the sort.
Sir, we have an arrest warrant.
They said they were there just to talk.
And the content of your conversation was your Facebook post?
They mentioned it, yes.
And so did you try to explain to them what you were doing? Just expressing your viewpoint.
They didn't. They seemed concerned, but they weren't very specific. So I felt like I had to draw it out of them.
Okay, so you went into detail in your statement. At what point did they move forward to arrest you and put handcuffs on?
Very specifically, 10 to 15 minutes into the conversation, the cops surrounded me and started trying.
Did that surprise you at that point?
It did, absolutely. They didn't. It was almost as if they had come from that purpose in the beginning.
You're eventually taken to a hospital where you're put in what's called a psych ward. You wind up in a psychological ward where you have psychiatrists asking you questions. And one of them you told me was, do you hear voices and stuff like that? You had one psychologist, as you said, a psychiatrist, who said that he was going to brainwash you. I remember you calling me on the phone about that when you were very concerned. So obviously, people like you, or people like me who write it all the time, can become targets. So you became a target. Now this is, go back and
it's almost like
this is the government you serve overseas. You become a target of that government.
Well, it's a government that I love.
And you want to see good things. You want freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why you got on the internet and spoke, and you got punished for it.
Y'all see that guy get tasered at John Kerry's speech on YouTube? Yeah. Did y'all hear what he asked John Kerry to get himself tasered? Did you hear the question? You didn't hear the question? He was like, is it not true, Senator Kerry, that you are a member of Skull and Crossbones, a secret society with George Bush? And Kerry was like, that's a very good question, and I'm going to answer that question.
To continue to pile name upon some wall in the future for a strategy that has failed. That's the distinction. Sir.
I first and foremost want to thank you for your time. You spent a lot of time talking to us here today. I want to thank you for coming and being open and honest. You recommended a book to us earlier. I wanted to recommend a book to you. It's called Art Madhouse by Greg Glass.
Yeah, I have it actually.
Yeah, he's the top investigative journalist in America.
I've already read it.
And he says you won the 2004 election.
Right.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? You won in 2004. In fact, there were multiple reports on the day of the election of disenfranchisement of black voters in Florida and Ohio. I'll ask my question. Thank you very much. I'll ask my question. I'm going to preface it. He's been talking for 2 hours. I think I can have 2 minutes. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to ask you my question. I'm going to inform people, and then I'm going to ask you my question. So there are multiple reports of disenfranchisement of black voters on the day of the election in 2004.
Right.
There was also voting machines, electronic voting machines in Volusia County, Florida, that counted backwards. So amidst all these reports of phony, bogus stuff going on, how could you concede the election on the day? How could you concede the 2004 election on the day? When in this book, it says there were 5 million votes that were suppressed, but you won the election. Didn't you want to be president? I'm not even done yet. I have 2 more questions. If you were so against Iran, how come you're not saying, let's impeach Bush now? Impeach Bush now before we can invade Iran. Why don't we impeach him? Impeach Bush. Clinton was impeached for what? A blowjob? Why don't we impeach Bush? All right? Also, were you a member of Skull and Bones in college with Bush? Were you in the same secret society as Bush? Were you in Skull and Bones? Thank you for cutting my mic. Thank you. Are you going to arrest me? Excuse me. Excuse me. What are you arresting me for? Whoa. Is anybody watching this? I'm not doing this. I want you to get off me. Get off me. Wait. Get off me. Hey. What are you doing? What are you doing? What is going on? What is going on? I want to stand and listen to you answer my question. Why are you arresting me for asking? Help! Are you kidding? You're arresting me. Help! I didn't do anything. Help me! They're arresting me.
He's got a taser on his chest. I mean, this really is ridiculous.
I didn't do anything. Tase me, bro. Don't tase me. I didn't do anything. Ow! 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 Let me go.
Why are you doing that?
Oh my God.
Back up. Why?
What did I do?
Come on.
When this all happened, I spoke to you before you even had a chance to speak to Andrew, who was being held in jail. Right. When you saw the tape, when you saw what led up to the tasering, were you angry at your son or were you proud of your son?
Well, I was very proud of my son for standing up for his rights, basically. He was asking a question at a forum, a college setting, where people are supposed to ask questions. This was a town forum where people came to ask questions to Senator Kerry, and he asked the questions maybe that no one else had the guts to ask.
And Judy, as a mom, when you heard people say, this is a troublemaker, this is a guy who went there to cause trouble, how do you respond to that?
Well, I know that that's not the case. He's not a troublemaker. He was there to discuss his beliefs.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
The history of our planet is the most epic tale that was ever written. The true history of our planet is also the saddest journey that one could ever experience, which is why it is hard for most people to want to understand the true problems that exist within our world. It is hard to accept the fact that the human race is going through radical changes, and that our beautiful planet, being directly linked to us, is also going through similar changes. The energy of every human is connected with the life force of the living planet, and when a majority of human emotion is negative, so then too is the energy of the earth negative. The human psyche is affected from the stress of daily living, financial restraints, mass responsibility, and of course, fear, all adding to the soul of our planet Gaia. The modern way of living is designed to keep us down. In a day and age where families are lucky to spend 4 to 5 hours a day with each other, the world has drastically changed from a loving, family-based way of life into a selfish, punishing, individualistic struggle to maintain our basic necessities for living. Every human being is controlled by a government or political structure in a consumer-based society. Ever since the human race became social beings, there has been a hierarchy or order amongst various groups, and therefore we have essentially always been controlled by something other than our natural instinct. In primitive times, it was the elders, chiefs, and shamans who dominated the hierarchy, as their enlightenment or intelligence set them apart from the others in the tribe. This awareness and knowledge was kept secret, because to reveal it would be to give control to anyone that would possess it. Over time, as our species advanced, our intellect and measures of control also evolved, and secret societies like the Knights Templar and Babylonian mystery schools were created to maintain this enlightenment. In order to comprehend the vastness of this concept, we must look at it in a very basic but interesting way. This historical investigation can be seen as a puzzle. Once certain pieces are connected, we start to see the bigger picture. Just as a puzzle has X amount of pieces, each piece should be viewed as a question, and these questions will only fit together when the right questions are asked. The human mind in modern times is like that of a shattered puzzle, and because of the manipulation of news, history, and the control of the general public, it is extremely hard to figure out which questions to ask to be able to fit the pieces of the puzzle together. The word occult, when it is literally translated, means hidden, and the system is designed to confuse us so that we will never see what is truly happening in the world in which we live. The people who control this system are like the character of the Wizard of Oz, mostly unknown entities designing and controlling the world's activities through various systems and never revealing their true identities or intentions. Most people remain unaware of these people's identities or intentions due to their methods of maintaining their secrecy, and their influence on the masses of the world's population is completely astounding and overwhelming. It is nearly impossible to escape the effect of this power structure due to our need and dependency on the system they have created, and it is quite unfortunate that many people will never reach their full potential as human beings in this lifetime due to the psychological effects the system has bestowed upon them. Many of you may think that you are not influenced by this system, or you have taken steps to protect yourself from it, but nearly all people on planet Earth are the product of a pre-designed reality they are not able to escape from. A simple way to find out if you have been affected by it is by using basic mathematics. If you look at each day of your life in 24 hours like the planet already does, you can determine how much you are using your potential by splitting your day into pieces. Many people work jobs to support themselves and their families, or attend school so that as we grow older, we can get better paying jobs to support ourselves and our families. We can call this piece occupation, meaning that this time is occupied and designated to the maintaining of our life and to ensure we have the money to be able to afford the things we need to survive each day. The next piece we will call the ethereal, which represents the time we spend recharging our batteries during sleep so that we can maintain ourselves mentally and physically on a daily basis. The third piece we will call responsibility, which would be the time we spend either driving to work or school, eating to maintain hunger, brushing our teeth, showering, and generally taking care of ourselves while we are awake to ensure our health and general maintenance. The final piece of our equation would then be our potential piece, which represents the amount of time we have remaining each day to expand our potential by spending time with our families, independent learning, hobbies and leisure activities, and general free time to relax and be able to tap into our life on a personal, spiritual, and developmental level. The resulting percentage or number of hours left over is often quite low and is evidence that we are living in a very strange and constricting world where we are literally making a living. The unfortunate truth of the matter is, much of the time we spend living our lives is dedicated to basic survival, a struggle to maintain a source of income to pay for the absolute and bare minimal things we need to survive as human beings on this earth. These things are food, water, and appropriate shelter. Without those things, we would all die and our species would cease to exist. Furthermore, those basic necessities are often what consumes most of our paychecks, and along with the need for things like a card or transportation to work each day, communication so we have access to each other to maintain our progress, and other such important things to help our maintenance, many families all over the world are left with very little money left over to afford extras such as entertainment, vacations or travel, educational materials, and items for hobbies and personal interests. It is for this reason the music industry stopped selling albums, and movie stores and record stores are becoming a thing of the past. Essentially, we live in a world where in order to survive, we have to conform from the moment we are born and given a birth certificate to be a product of our society. Much of the youth in modern times are programmed from a very young age to accept and conform to this system or matrix, and are thought of as product or stock by the controlling forces of the world government system. While parents go to work, their children are brought to daycare centers before they are sent to school to begin their education. All of this time the parents are slowly getting more and more disconnected from their children and allowing a system to input its teachings, opinions, and control methods into play. Kids are brought to school and work starts very early in the morning to ensure that as we grow older, it is normal to wake up to an alarm clock every morning. This cuts off our connection to our subconscious and very important dream world, in which we will discuss further at a later time during this documentary. We are also taught that in order to get a job in a field that we would enjoy doing for large extended periods of time, we need to get specialized or post-secondary education, which costs us thousands of dollars and puts a large debt on everyone as soon as they complete their studies. This debt usually takes a long time to pay back at high interest rates, and students are often forced to take jobs that are not related to their studies. The cost for the initial education received is often quite large, and often a waste of money, time, and years of their lives, especially if they are not employed in the field or area of study. If a student changes their mind, it is also quite expensive to change their course or to continue education. The system is designed to ensure a majority of the public are ensnared within this vicious cycle. The struggle for survival, and essentially the concept of money itself, is the basis for much of the stress of people in the world. The stress on the human mind in modern times is much more than that of people of previous generations, because the system is designed to keep us in fear of the establishment. As we have seen time and time again, when someone does not adhere and rebels against their governments, they are often silenced or nullified using various methods and techniques. Celebrities are killed or humiliated through the media for speaking out against the establishment in order to diminish their power to make change for a better world. Mainstream media teaches us that we should spend our money on pointless objects, and the music we hear on the radio tells us to go to the bar and spend our money on sexual desires. The news reports the bad news first, and negative events are headlined to instill fear amongst the people that absorb the information. The energy of our emotions then affects the planet itself, which is why there is so much chaos and disruption happening in our world today. This is also part of their plan, to remove our rights and freedoms and maintain control and domination over the population.
It has been shown that our emotions have a vibratory frequency to them. Furthermore, there are only two emotions that humankind experiences: fear and love. All other emotions branch either directly or indirectly from these two emotions. Fear has a long and slow frequency vibration to it, while love has a very rapid and high frequency. To show that vibration is the very foundation of existence, Hans Jene developed what is known as cymatics in the 1940s to show that when vibrations of sound are passed through a form of media, there is a set pattern that will follow. When the frequency increases, the media develops into a more complex pattern. This is precisely what is happening to our Earth and to humanity. There are 64 possible codes of amino acids in our DNA structure made from 4 elements: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. By any means of logic, we should have all 64 codes activated within our DNA structure. Yet we presently only have 20 active codes.
And of these 64 possibilities, it appears that only 20 of these codes are turned on right now for us, the 20 amino acids. There is a switch that turns off and turns on where those coding sites lie, and that the switch for that turning off and turning on is what we call emotion. And this is the first time that we've ever seen the patterns of emotion directly physically linked to human genetic material. Well, fear is a long, slow wave of emotion. So this wave of fear is a long, slow wave and touches relatively few sites on this DNA. So an individual living in fear is limited to the number of antenna that they have available to them, whereas an individual living in the pattern of love. This is love in DNA. You can see it's a higher frequency, shorter wavelength. We have many more potential sites for coding along that genetic pattern. This information, this is amazing. This is the first time we've ever had a hard digital link between emotion and genetics.
It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi teaches a technique called transcendental meditation. It's a simple, easy, effortless technique, yet supremely profound, that allows any human being to dive within, experiencing subtler levels of mind and intellect, and transcend and experience this ocean of pure consciousness.
The mind is deep like a lake. The ripples on the surface represent the conscious mind, the activity of the mind on the surface. And the whole depth of the lake is silent. And that is the subconscious mind, which is not used by the waves. But if the waves could deepen and incorporate more silent levels of the water, the waves could become the waves of the ocean, the mighty waves. This is what happens in transcendental meditation. The surface activity of the conscious mind deepens and incorporates within its fold the depth of the subconscious. And with practice, nothing remains subconscious. The whole subconscious becomes conscious, and a man starts using full potential of the mind.
Memory, sometimes we may not remember. Just like this child, he may not have memory when he was very small, but you have got memory. When he was a small child, you are doing something, or he was playing with some cats and dogs, but he does not remember that. But you remember it. So, simply because he has forgotten, does that mean that the incidences are not present? So this argument is not very strong, because I cannot remember. You do not remember so many things.
Do not arouse the wrath of the great and powerful Oz. I said come back tomorrow.
If you are really great and powerful, you'll keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz? You ungrateful creatures think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
You are? I don't believe you.
No, I'm afraid it's true. There's no other wizard except me. You humbug! Yes, it's exactly so. I'm a humbug.
Oh, you're a very bad man.
There are people who believe that they have a God-given right to rule over others. They believe that their outward appearance is superior to all others. they harbor selfish ambitions to be rich and to have power over what they describe as common people. They lie, cheat, steal, strangle, stab and slash their way to power. They believe that their actual willpower, what the British occultist Aleister Crowley described as the will of Thelema, the royal will, must be obeyed.
And you will become senior. See, in this fashion does the Brotherhood express its continuity. It will continue long after all of us are dead. But that continuity depends upon one thing: obedience. Absolute obedience.
It was during this time that the modern humans began to take stage in world history. Early hominid species such as the Paranthropus and Homo erectus have been discovered in fossilic records, and it was during the lower Paleolithic period that they eventually disappeared, leaving the only fossilized records found belonging to the Homo erectus, an early form of bipedal or upright man. Homo erectus is a now extinct species that lived from the end of the Pliocene epoch until the later Pleistocene period, approximately 1.8 million years ago. This species originated in Africa, and during the ice-free period in the late Pleistocene migrated as far as India, China, and Indonesia. During this migration, humans interbred with other early archaic human forms already migrated out of Africa, which incorporated their genetic materials into the modern gene pool that can be found today. As our biological details evolved, so did our social development, and it is during this time that the earliest forms of hierarchy begin to take place. The only way we are able to understand the history of social development is through the evolution of communication. Without documentation, we cannot be certain as to what the people of early civilizations believed in or practiced. It is through this study that we discover the importance of symbols and the interpretations of this early form of writing. Before any system of writing was developed, early humans would draw pictures to explain ideas and concepts to one another. Many of these images can be found as cave drawings, in which several still exist to this day. These images offer an insight into the lives of the early people, and as many tribes and bands migrated, several systems of spoken language were developed as well. It is not until Sumeria, around the 30th century BC, when we see the first systems of writing developed, which were called cuneiform, essentially created from a system of pictographs. Cuneiform writing was eventually replaced by the Phoenician alphabet during the Neo-Assyrian Empire and became extinct by the 2nd century AD. It was through cuneiform script that we are able to have a better insight and understanding into the lives of the earliest civilizations, and details of kings and the ruling class can be discovered. It is in early Mesopotamia that we see the first highly intellectual societies become more advanced and flourished. Before this time, a majority of the social groups remained in the form of hunter-gatherer tribes. However, there is scarce documentations or records of these people's social development or religious or spiritual beliefs. Common ideas, philosophy, and even cultural evolution became more advanced due to the creation of agriculture. Families merged and settled in farming communities and became more stationary as opposed to a nomadic lifestyle. This allowed for new ideas and concepts to be discussed and expanded upon. Due to the migration of some tribes into Africa, Asia, and Europe, the human population began to see more increasing numbers. When groups would settle and begin farming, this would begin a community where ideas could be expressed and the earliest forms of spirituality and religion began. These communities can be traced back to even earlier than 9000 BC. However, it is not until the Neolithic Revolution in the Fertile Crescent where we can begin to trace documentation of mankind's evolution and progress as a species. The Fertile Crescent, also known as the Cradle of Civilization, contains evidence of the first communities known to man, and is considered by many to be the starting point of modern evolution in history. During these times, before the foundation of Mesopotamia began to take place, people were developing more philosophical ideas, and also the earliest forms of religion began to appear. People began to develop more spiritual outlooks on life based on their surroundings and interactions with nature. The living planet was something they felt quite an attachment to, which also gave them everything they needed to continue survival. Therefore, things like lakes and rivers, trees, plants, animals, the sun, moon, and stars were held in high regard. These people thought that there was something truly magical about the elements, including acts of natural occurrence such as storms, seasonal change, and rainfall. This formed what many would consider to be the earliest source of pagan beliefs, and is likely where the belief in animism took root as well. Animism is the belief that all things found on Earth, including trees, rivers, and even rocks and mountains, contain energy, or a soul, and that all things on the planet are connected and dependent on one another. Little is known about these early beliefs because at the time there was no system of documentation created. However, it is quite likely that these ideals were what began the earliest forms of religious beliefs and practices. Much of what might be referred to as religious belief was caused by mankind's natural intuitions to discover the world and make sense of things from a rational or scientific viewpoint. Things that could not be explained at the time, such as miracles, natural and supernatural phenomenon, and cosmic observations must have been seen as extraordinary or out of this world, and therefore the belief of there being a higher supreme being or creator became something that was widely accepted. It was likely the healers, shamans, chiefs, prophets, and soothsayers that passed down these early beliefs, which eventually developed into more complex systems of spirituality, and the worship of gods became more apparent and prominent. As agricultural communities continued to expand, and larger centers of civilization began to appear, the discussion of these beliefs became more widespread, and temples of worship began to show up throughout history. It is in Mesopotamia, dating back to 5400 BC, when we see common religious beliefs being practiced, and it is also where we discover the first systems of writing and cuneiform being used. These records and civilizations predate even Egypt in their antiquity. Mesopotamia is also the first place which kept records of their kings and rulers, just as in Egypt, which can be found in their hieroglyphs. It is through these records where we may begin to uncover the history of control, domination, and often corruption by the hands of the rulers of ancient kingdoms. Through warfare, many of these kingdoms expanded geographically and maintained control over the population. This method of expansion and domination is not so different from today's government systems.
Every religion was created to guide the select groups of the masses. This entire system is like the Brave New World, where you have members of different ranks doing their job, from the highest class to the lowest class. Albert Pike, Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Confederate military officer of the Civil War, on page 105 of Morals and Dogma, states the following: Masonry, like all religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages, or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve to be misled, to conceal the truth which it calls light from them, and draw to them away from it. Truth is not for those who are unworthy or unable to receive it, or would pervert it. So God himself incapacitates many men by color blindness to distinguish colors, and leads the masses away from the highest truth, giving them the power to attain only so much of it as it is profitable for them to know. Every age has had a religion suited to its capacity.
Upon further analysis into the origin of religious belief, we can confirm that indeed the first deities and gods to be worshipped were all based from nature and its terrestrial forces. As we follow the course of religious evolution, many of the earliest beliefs were expanded upon and became more and more complex. An example of this can be found in the instance of Sumerian beliefs spreading and influencing Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian religious systems. In many cases, gods' names were kept the same, or a name was changed, but the attributes of the entity remained the same. Much of today's occult practice is based from these earliest forms of deity or god worship. One of the oldest city-states in the world, and likely the birthplace of organized religion, is the city of Eridu, which dates back to 5400 BC, and was founded in Syria in what is now Tel Abu Sharin in modern-day Iraq. According to the Sumerian king list, Eridu was named the first city of kingship, predating the Egyptian pharaoh list. Just as in the Bible, the lifespan of humans is separated by a great flood in what is known as the Sumerian deluge myth. In the beginning, humans lived far longer lives than what the average life expectancy is of modern humans. This is because some of the earliest deities or kings were demigods, or part human and part god. Many early religions share this belief, and as time passed, new religious tales were created, expanding from the earliest forms of spirituality created and known to mankind. According to the Sumerian king list, Eridu was founded by the god Enki, who was believed to have come from the Abzu, or the deep ocean, which was an aquifer from where all life on earth began. An Abzu, in Sumerian mythology, was the name for the temple of Enki in the city of Eridu. It was also known as the House of Cosmic Waters. Later, in Assyrian and Babylonian temples, tanks which held holy water were also called Abzu. These were similar to the more modern washing pools found in Islamic mosques or baptismal water in Christian churches. The Sumerian belief system was later expanded on by the Babylonians, and in their story of creation, known as the Enuma Elish, names two original gods, Abzu, the god of fresh water, and Tiamat, the goddess of oceanic salt water. Just as scientific explanation depicts, all life came from the sea. These two gods had several offspring, including Ea, father of Marduk, who the Babylonians thought to be the supreme deity, and was likely personified based off the Sumerian sun god Utu. In the Enuma Elish, Ea, based off the Sumerian god Enki, destroys Abzu and becomes the chief god, and with his wife Damkina have a son, whom is Marduk. Tiamat takes revenge for the death of Abzu, and a battle ensues between her and Marduk. Tiamat's new husband, Kingu, becomes the new supreme dominion. However, Tiamat loses the battle against Marduk, and her body is torn in two pieces. He then uses these pieces to create the earth and the skies. He creates mankind to serve the gods using the blood of Kingu, which is perhaps the origin of the word king. A majority of the first cities known to mankind and documented by archaeological findings were built to honor the gods, such as Nippur, Sippar, Lagash, Gursu, and Uruk, which is thought to be where the name Iraq is derived from. Eridu and Ur were also created for the gods. Alulim was the first king, and ruled Eridu for 28,800 years. Alangar was his successor and ruled Eridu for another 36,000 years. When the city of Eridu fell, the kingship was then moved to Bad Tabaira, which has been identified as Tel al-Madineh in modern-day Iraq. The name Bad Tabaira is translated as meaning Wall of the Copper Workers or Fortress of the Smiths, relating to ancient Masonic origins. Temples built to honor the gods are known as ziggurats and were not only created as religious centers but also served as political and cultural headquarters for ancient Sumerian city-states.
The archaeological excavations that year have been successful, as you will find out once you arrive and you see the discoveries for yourself. I'm not even going to attempt to describe what has been found within the ruins of Ur. Your mission will be to enter Ur and to help catalog and protect what the archaeologists have found.
If I go to the ziggurat of Ur, this ancient land here. So here we have Ari Air Base, and it's an airport, military airport. The United States has taken it over since the first Gulf War in Iraq, and all of the town of Ur is what is contained inside. It's American run now. It's been American run since the first George Bush Gulf War. And it was attacked heavily then. They really fought for it during the first Gulf War. It was heavily damaged and stuff. And so they are fighting hard for it. So there must be something, and this is in the middle of nowhere. This is all alone. There isn't anything built near it that's modern. This is in the middle of a desert, and it's a giant old structure that's 4,000 years old. It's as if it would be similar to us, like putting, going to Egypt and then conquering the pyramids or something. There is our ziggurat from space. Boink. Isn't she beautiful? Now, her neighbor over here. Here it is. This is the house of Abraham. See how defined it is? How you can see this clearer than anything else?
It's a view from the sky.
It's been painted white so that you can see it. It's been preserved very well. It looks like it's got some kind of, it's different than everything else. I mean, this thing is so defined. When you look at this map, it stands out insanely. Like, look at the rest of these structures. Nothing. But the house of Abraham still stands. I mean, it stands beautifully, too. It's all arches. It's an incredible mansion. It just doesn't have a ceiling, the roof anymore. Everything else is intact, it appears. So Abraham would have grown up looking at this ziggurat his whole life. He would have been aware of this, all of this stuff. So it's an interesting, this is where all of everything, like Semite history and pre-Semite history goes on. This is where all religion is born on planet Earth, and our military has conquered it.
Mesopotamia, it means the land between two rivers, Euphrates and Tigris rivers. Euphrates and Tigris meeting together to the south of this city near Basra. They called that city Gurne, and they thought their garden of Eden and also their big tree, they called it Adam tree. The name of this ancient site, Ur, 2 letters, U-R, and in the Bible they call it another name, Ur of the Chaldeans. Ur in that time, capital of the Sumerian. The civilizations in Iraq, Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian. So this is the capital of the Sumerian. Sumerian started here before 4,000 years BC. But Sumerian civilization important because the oldest civilization, and Sumerian putting the basis of many things in the world, like the beginning of the writing. The first letters of the writing in the world started during the time of the Sumerian, and the kind of that writing called iconographic writing. The beginning of the writing like pictures. After that developed it and called it cuneiform. After that 50 years came another writing in Egypt called hieroglyphic writing. And this city also started the invention of the wheel. In addition to that, also in this place, home of Prophet Abraham. Prophet Abraham recognized by Christians, Muslims, and Jewish and another religions as father of the prophets. It means father of the religions.
And typically where lines cross, where you have more than one line intersecting, temples were often built.
These are called conductivity discontinuities, which sounds highly technical, but it's merely the place where one area of ground that has a good ability to conduct electricity meets another area of ground that has a lesser ability to conduct these natural electric currents.
The Chinese had the same tradition. They called them dragon lines. It was illegal for a commoner to be buried on such a line. A king had to be buried on such a line. They put palaces there. There's a whole series of sacred sites that were always built on lines like this.
This strip that stretches from Easter Island to Giza is actually part of a 25,000-mile long circle.
This 100-kilometer wide circle goes through many significant ancient sites across the globe. In Peru, it passes through the Paracas Drawing, the Nazca Tracks, Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu, Cusco, Sacsayhuaman, and the Parachoari Pyramids. In Africa, it crosses Mali and the mysterious Dogon lands, where they knew the stars Sirius B and C before any astronomers. Algeria and the Tassili Nijar, with its painted Martian god. In Egypt, it goes through the Siwa Oasis and its Zeus Ammon temple, and through the Great Pyramid at Giza. Next, it crosses Petra, Ur, where Abraham was born, Persepolis in Iran, Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, where the unreadable writing was found that is so close to the writing on Easter Island. Then it crosses sites that have always been known as the homes of the gods, Khajuraho in India, Phayé in Burma, Sukhothai in Thailand, Angkor Wat and Prahiar in Cambodia. And it ends with the most isolated and mysterious place on Earth, Easter Island. There is an astonishing accuracy to this alignment. Although many of these sites date from different times, most were built on the ruins of more ancient sacred sites. At some remote point in the past, someone had built a series of sacred sites on this line, circling the globe. The circle was as long as the equator, but the mystery doesn't end there. If we take this circle as an equator, then its north pole will be located here, and the triangle formed by this point, Nazca and Giza, exactly matches the shape of the Great Pyramid. The distance between Nazca and Giza equals the distance between Teotihuacan and Giza. The same is true of the distance between Angkor Wat and Nazca, and between Mohenjo-Daro and Easter Island. The distance between Easter Island and Giza is 10,000 times the golden number. The distance between Angkor and Giza multiplied by the golden number equals the distance between Giza and Nazca. And the Giza-Nazca distance multiplied by the golden number equals the Nazca-Angkor distance. In 1859, an Englishman, John Taylor, discovered if you divided this dimension by this one, you got pi, the mathematical formula. This caused controversy at the time. Some people thought it was an accident. Could it be a coincidence that these particular dimensions give us pi, one of the building blocks of mathematics, science, and engineering? I asked my anonymous Egyptian researcher if he could explain why these dimensions were significant.
Because the half perimeter is the biggest horizontal visible dimension, and its height is the biggest vertical invisible dimension.
Pi is not the only significant number in the Great Pyramid. If we look at the dimensions of the various parts of the pyramid, each part can be multiplied by a whole number to give the total height. The surface of the four sides divided by the surface of the base equals the famous golden number, one of the key principles of aesthetics and design. The golden number is unique. These equations work with the golden number and only the golden number. The golden number occurs all over the natural world, in the shapes of plants, in astrology, in the proportions of the human form, in the proportions of great art.
The golden number appears to be a constant in the universe.
Although Western civilization is generally considered to be the product of Greek and Roman culture, the Greeks and Romans both acknowledge ancient Egypt as the source of great ancient wisdom. A mysterious land of riddles whose secrets were considered the highest prize to some of the greatest minds in history. Egypt was known to the ancient world as a repository of high knowledge and magical practices. These universal secrets were contained and kept alive in the mystery schools. The teachings and magical ability they imparted were held in the highest secrecy and reverence. Entrance to the temples that held the secrets was tightly restricted. They were the domain of royalty, priests, and privileged initiates. Forefathers of modern thought, such as Pythagoras, Plato, and others, tell of waiting more than 20 years preparing before acceptance into the mystery schools. The secret teachings were known as esoteric or occult or symbolist teachings and were held to contain the secrets of the universe and the keys to great magic. Those who were allowed to receive the mysteries often went on to join a who's who of historical movers and shakers. Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Galileo, Copernicus, Da Vinci, Kepler, Isaac Newton, Napoleon. They were rewarded for their pursuit of the ancient wisdom with not just knowledge, but a new way of thinking that allowed them to write their names in human history.
For its time, Egypt led the race in terms of technology, agriculture, philosophy, and spirituality. Although their belief system was developed from earlier forms of religion, it was Egyptian beliefs that inspired several common religious systems that can be found today. It is also in Egypt that we find a detailed king list and tombs of several pharaohs and rulers. Similar to the Sumerian list, it is said that 8 god kings ruled Egypt. These gods were named Ptah, Ra, Sosis, Geb, Osiris, Set, Horus, Thoth, and Maat. These gods were followed by differing sets of semi-rulers or demigods. Some of these demigods were Hezekiah, Kaya, Tiyu, Thesh, and Neheb of Lower Egypt during the early dynastic period. There is also Irihor, Ka, and Narmer of Upper Egypt. Narmer unified Upper and Lower Egypt, creating what is referred to as the dynastic period, or the first dynasties. It is believed that Narmer ruled the first dynasty around 3100 BC. The first known historical record and document found from Egypt is known as the Narmer Palette. Throughout its early history, Egyptians worshipped gods that were linked to elements of nature such as the sun, moon, and animals. It was not until Amenhotep IV, also known as Akhenaten, when monotheism was introduced. Monotheism is the belief that a single god or supreme being, such as Christianity, Catholicism, and Islamic beliefs. Akhenaten was also the first known religious persecutor, killing those who opposed his beliefs and attempting to abolish all other religious systems. His son became a very well-known king in Egypt, Tutankhamun, and took the throne of Egypt when he was just 9 years old. Upon taking the throne, he restored classical Egyptian beliefs. Through DNA evidence, it has been proven that Tutankhamun was the product of an incestual relationship between his father Akhenaten and one of his sisters. This was common during those times, to keep the power and accumulated wealth within the family. Later we will discover that this incestuous lineage is still practiced among world rulers today. Evidence that these people will stop at nothing to maintain their control and ensure it is kept throughout the course of history. Egyptian belief and lifestyle has influenced many succeeding cultures and religions, and continues to influence several aspects of life in modern times. In 30 BC, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, and the ancient Egyptian knowledge was adapted and passed along with it. This transmitted through the popes of Rome and the Vatican Empire. Scepters, staves, crowns, and several other items were adapted from Egyptian royalty, and just as the Egyptians, Jubilee ceremonies are celebrated by modern kings and queens. In 2012, the Queen of the Commonwealth Realms, Elizabeth II, celebrated her Diamond Jubilee, symbolizing 60 years of reign as queen. Egyptians also celebrated jubilees for their rulers. Queen Elizabeth II is also the supreme governor of the Church of England. Christianity is the most practiced religion in the world, having 2.1 billion followers, accounting for 33% of the world's total population. Christianity has many denominations or subsets, such as Catholicism, Protestant, Evangelical, Gnostic, Anglican, Mormon, and Orthodox, as well as many others. Followers of Christianity believe in the life of Jesus Christ. About 60% of Christians are Catholics, and as we all know, the power of the Catholic Church resides at the Vatican in Rome. An obelisk also once resided at the Vatican before it was moved to St. Peter's Square. A total of 8 known ancient Egyptian obelisks were taken out of Egypt after the Roman conquest and brought to Rome. The obelisk at St. Peter's Square contains the seal of the House of Chigi. The word pharaoh comes from the word pra, which means great house or royal house. Other important obelisks can be found in London, England, and the Washington Monument in DC. The London obelisk is part of a set of 3 obelisks called Cleopatra's Needle. The other 2 can be found in Paris and New York City. The obelisk always appears above a body of water, so that its reflection may be cast upon it. The obelisk represents the phallus, or male, whereas the body of water represents the female, or the womb. Humans are raised in water while they are in their mother's womb, and therefore the obelisks represent the bloodline, or descendants. Cleopatra's Needle likely received its name because of this, and maintaining royal power is something that is of the utmost importance to the ruling classes found not only in ancient but modern times as well. In 2004, Canadian author Tom Harper released a book entitled The Pagan Christ, which influenced the first Zeitgeist documentary in 2007. Harper's book explains the strikingly similar details between Egyptian and Christian beliefs. It would appear that the story of Jesus Christ stems from the story of the Egyptian god Horus. Both were born from a virgin mother, both were royal descendants, and their births were announced by angels. Both performed miracles and walked on water, and both were crucified and accompanied by 2 thieves, and resurrected after 3 days. The foster father of Horus was Seb, or Seth, and the foster father of Jesus was Joseph. Herut attempted to kill the infant Horus, while Herod slaughtered every firstborn to try and kill Jesus. Horus raised his father, Osiris, from the grave, and Jesus resurrected Lazarus from the grave. Horus resists temptation from Sut on a large mountain, and Jesus resists temptation from Satan on a large mountain. Horus was given the title Krst, and Jesus was given the title Christ, which can be translated to meaning the Anointed Ones. Several other similarities exist, and one can only look at this as evidence and come to the rational conclusion that the stories are nearly identical. It would seem that much more than the mystery religions were passed on in secrecy throughout the ages. Under the surface lies much deeper secrets, and only those enlightened to this wisdom have been allowed access to this information. Another notable curiosity in regards to the comparison between Egyptian rulers and biblical reference are the names of some of the pharaohs and characters in the Bible. There are several similarities in not only the names, but also the dates these people have been associated with. An example of this can be found in the instance of King Solomon, whom is thought to have lived around 970 to 931 BC. From 978 to 959 BC, Pharaoh Simon ruled Egypt. Moses is thought to have existed around 1527 to 1407 BC, and Pharaoh Amos I ruled Egypt between 1570 and 1546 BC. Pharaoh Thutmose III ruled Egypt from 1479 to 1425 BC. He also organized an army and defeated the enemies of the Hebrews in Canaan. Thutmose III is honored beside the obelisk located in London, England. The Union Jack of the United Kingdom represents the 12 tribes of Jacob, the uniting of kingdoms. Pharaoh Yaqueber ruled Egypt from 1655 to 1646 BC. Strangely, the pharaohs' names are omitted from the Bible, and one can not only help but come to the conclusion that the similarities are worth further investigation and could be quite plausible. Gnostic dualism, or the battle between good and evil, has existed for centuries. It is the balance of emotion, fear and love, yin and yang, black and white, God and the devil. It has been programmed into all of modern society through the religions and media. Generations of children have been raised on stories where there is always a good guy and a bad guy, and many of these stories contain subliminal messaging and deeper meanings. Only those aware of the interpretations of symbols may take notice. The all-seeing eye. The eye of Osiris. Once the blindfold has been removed, we become aware of the influence and intentions of this system. Is there a battle between good and evil happening on this planet? Has it already begun? Or is it time, waiting patiently for this looming confrontation to unfold and finally become apparent. The question remains, whose side are they on? Whose side are you on?
The secret is simply the fact that certain of their members worship Lucifer, and that they keep that secret from the overwhelming majority of their own members, and certainly the public is never to know this fact if they can help it. And the evidence to support that conclusion is ample, but only to one who cares enough to look for it. The problem with most people is they don't care enough to look for anything. So why the secrecy? The secrecy is because, folks, the real secret of Mystery Babylon is how to control everyone else. And if they reveal these secrets, they won't have the control, for it'll be in the hands of everyone. That is the greatest secret of the secret societies. And I can tell you now that most of us have been living in fantasy land for all of our lives. We don't even know anything near what the truth of any matter is. We must begin an honest search.
Now Osiris has as a symbol an eye. And that eye, of course, is the sun. And this eye represents the son of the underworld.
Quote, the arcana, defined as being a secret or hidden knowledge of the ancient mysteries, were never revealed to the profane, defined as those not initiated into the inner mysteries, except through the media of symbols. You're going to find, folks, that symbols mean more than you will ever begin to understand unless you waded deep into the stream of the Mystery Babylon, as I have.
If you sit back and think about it, if only for a moment, it doesn't take much to control a community and its people. Throughout history, the leaders of civilizations have maintained their control and power over their populations using the same methodology and mentality. The success of this technique becomes effective when the natural resources of a region becomes governed or controlled. As we discussed earlier, without food, water, shelter, and other such important elements vital to the continuance of human life, a person and the community they belong to cannot survive. By taking away the things we need to survive, or controlling it, the ruling class are able to create a reality in where all people belonging to a community become dependent on them for their survival. Perhaps a perfect example of this can be understood by taking a look at the house pet. Many people have pets, and these animals are completely dependent on their owners to ensure they are given the proper nourishment. As their masters, or owners, we are responsible to feed them, and without us, they would not survive for very long. We are the government-type figure in this situation, and if the pet or animal bites the hand that feeds them, they are likely to go without a meal, proper care and love, and would eventually die. The question remains, is it right to deny any living creature of the basic needs for survival? Do the starving communities in Africa really deserve to get the short end of the stick and go without clean drinking water and a warm meal on a daily basis? How can something as free and natural as education come at a cost, and things like food and water be used as a means of controlling a group of people? These are all important factors which we should all take an honest and deep look into, for it is these factors of society that make for an unbalanced world. In today's day and age, government systems control the community through the means of not only resources, but financially, economically, religiously, and militarily. If these aspects can be maintained and established, the population of a country, city, town, or community can be controlled. This is how the slave is created. From birth, being raised in this atmosphere to accept it as the norm, the reality of life. But is this our purpose? Are we meant to be raised in a world with this logic? Are we truly put on this earth to serve, having our natural and instinctual freedoms suppressed, sculpted, and manipulated? This is the reason for our limited potential. This is the reason why many people all around the world use such small portions of their mind's potential power, and the subconscious lies uninvolved with the regularities and balance of our thought patterns. Religion is often used to limit the potential of one's mind, and put the responsibility and ownership of one's body and soul in the hands of someone else. Through various means, many religions have been able to capture people's opinions and beliefs in regards to things such as historical events, science and spirituality, and is for this reason that so many people believe in various forms of religious doctrine and belief. As the fastest growing religion, Christianity quickly expanded from the 1st century, where it began as a Jewish sect in Israel and Palestine, and spread into Mesopotamia, Asia, and Egypt. By the end of the 4th century, it had replaced many religions, including those practiced by traditional Romans. During this time, much of Europe was converted to Christianity, and kings and rulers implemented this system of ideology into their regions of ownership. It was by means of a combination of military power, religion, and the control of resources that kingdoms expanded. Battles were fought and empires spread to all corners of the earth in what can be referred to as a real-life game of Risk. It was during the Age of Discovery, in the year 1455, when a document was written by Pope Nicholas V called the Romanus Pontifex. This document was given to King Alfonso V of Portugal and declared that all lands discovered and or conquered belonged to the Crown of Portugal. This document allowed for the colonization of many countries, resulting in the enslavement of the indigenous peoples of the Americas and the killing of any pagan believers or anyone whom the missionaries were not able to convert. This allowed for the first voyage of Christopher Columbus in 1492. John Cabot landed in Newfoundland in 1497, and Jacques Cartier was also able to colonize in Canada. Between 1550 and 1551, a debate called the Valladolid, or validity, began. The purpose of this debate was to establish whether or not the indigenous natives that were being conquered possessed souls, and if so, whether or not they were entitled to the basic rights of mankind. Not long after, Iberian claims were challenged by other European powers, mainly England, France, and the Netherlands, and the school of Salamanca legitimized conquest. This in turn limited the absolute power of the sovereign under the notion of the divine right of kings. Essentially, this resulted in the indigenous peoples having no say and no freedoms over the European monarchies. It was due to these laws that allowed for some of the earliest and largest genocides in human history. In 1697, the Mayans were defeated by the Spanish in the conquest of Yucatan. Mayan culture formed in what is now Mexico around 2000 BC and was a highly developed and sophisticated society at the time it came to a halt due to conquest. It is thought that the first native peoples to enter North America arrived between 30,000 and 11,000 BC. This is a large gap in time, however it is certain that by the time of colonization there were a large amount of civilizations and tribes in North America. These early settlers crossed a stretch of land in Beringia called the Bering Land Bridge. When sea levels were low, this allowed people to cross over from Asia and Mongolia when they were following the woolly mammoth that was part of their diet. Some of the earliest tribes and cultures that are known to have become established include the eastern woodlands, such as the Ojibwa, Nipissing, Iroquois, and Algonquin peoples. Other early cultures include the Olmec and Mississippian cultures.
For more than 500 years, American Indian people have been subjected to the ever-changing whims of the white man, who with sword in one hand and Bible in the other, swept across this land like a plague of locusts. What the people of the United States did not know was that their so-called enlightened nation was setting an example that would be followed in the 20th century by some of the worst butchers known to man, including Adolf Hitler. In his biography of Hitler, John Toland wrote, "Hitler's concept of concentration camps as well as the practicality of genocide owed much, so he claimed, to his studies of United States history, and he often praised to his inner circle the efficiency of America's extermination by starvation and uneven combat of the red savages who could not be tamed by captivity." In their efforts to deal with the original inhabitants of this land, the European and then the American governments tried many different approaches. First they tried subjugation. Then when that failed, extermination. And when that wasn't totally successful, then came the reservations. And the land set aside for reservations in the 1800s was generally the most worthless land that could be found. Indians were relocated to these lands for as long as the grass grows and the rivers flow, unless, like in the Black Hills of South Dakota, valuable mineral resources are discovered on that land, and then the Indians are uprooted and relocated again.
The 13 colonies of British North America were founded between the years 1607 with the establishment of Virginia and 1733 with the colony of Georgia. The early settlers founded their colonies by route of the Atlantic coast and included Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts Bay, Maryland, North and South Carolina, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York, the Providence Plantations, and Georgia. It was also during this time, in 1620, when the infamous Mayflower made its voyage to North American shores, containing English and Dutch separatists. The initial 13 colonies were part of a larger set of British American colonies which included land in Canada, and early settlers for the most part remained loyal to the Crown. To this day, land that went unclaimed by settlers in British America is called Crown land, which means that it belongs to the royalty of the British Empire. Crown land can still be found in countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Just as the early British settlers remained tied with the British Empire, other European settlers also remained loyal to their kings and rulers. Much of the system of governance in the New World was based from the British Constitution. The king corresponded with the governor, the House of Commons to the Colonial Assembly, and the House of Lords to the Governor's Council. The codes of law followed by America's early inhabitants were drawn from English law. English common law is still practiced in Canada and most of the United States, and the face of royalty, which can still be found on Canadian currency, reminds us of the success of British conquest. The Queen's face appears on the largest number of various currencies in our planet's history. In 1765, when British Parliament asserted its authority to implement taxes, a series of American protests began, which in turn led directly to the American Revolution. To oppose these taxes, members of the Freemasons and Boston Tea Party dumped British tea into Boston Harbor because it contained a hidden tax that Americans refused to pay. The American Revolution began because of the dispute between political ideas and representation, republicanism, and several other politically motivated reasonings. It was not until 1776 when the 13 colonies declared independence as the United States of America during the reign of King George III. Several wars were fought during America's early European expansion, including one of the first global military wars, the 7 Years' War, between 1756 and 1763. This battle of risk involved the majority of the great powers at the time, including Britain in personal union with the House of Hanover from Germany and France, or the Bourbons. The conflict occurred because of conflicting interests in their colonial and trade empires. For the most part, Britain dominated. However, it would not be the last war fought for the sake of colonization. European intellects also made their voyage into the New World, or as it's referred to in Freemasonry, the New Atlantis. Many of these intellectuals followed beliefs such as the Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Enlightenment or the Age of Reason. The Enlightenment is a cultural movement which began in 18th century Europe and made its way to the American colonies. Its purpose is to reform society using reason and advanced knowledge through science, as opposed to things such as superstition, revelation, religious traditions, and faith. It is essentially the anti-religion, which influenced the establishment of many secret societies and modern religions, such as the Bavarian Illuminati, Scientology, and Satanism. The political ideals of the Enlightenment influenced the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Bill of Rights, the French Declaration of Rights, and the Polish Constitution of May 3, 1791, and also had a major influence on the Freemasons or Founding Fathers of the United States. Masons such as Francis Bacon, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington followed the beliefs set out by the Enlightenment. This influence has had a major impact on modern society and has helped maintain the control of the ruling class over the common people. The founding of America allowed for a society to be built anew, a fresh start, and also provided for an additional center of power that was outside of Europe. This was of utmost importance for the Crown of England, which is why they fought so hard to maintain their influence and control over the developing population in America. Although the country declared independence in 1776, the upper class and those tied to the European monarchs were still able to maintain their control and did so in the same fashion as was used throughout history, to control the country religiously, economically, and militarily. The United States became the third center of absolute power in the world in relation to European royalty. These three central kingdoms of power are controlled religiously through the Vatican City in Rome, financially and politically through London City in England, through the Crown, and militarily and scientifically through Washington in the District of Columbia. All three of these places are privately owned corporations or city-states and have their own set of laws and constitutions. They also maintain their own courts and police, and their continuance and control of absolute power is of highest priority to the ruling class of today. The private corporate city-state of London was established in 1694 by King William III of Orange, whom also was responsible for privatizing the Bank of England. It is now the global financial center, along with Wall Street, pays no taxes, and houses worldwide English Freemasonry. It is the effectiveness of these three power structures which has allowed for the control of the world in which we live today. It has allowed the world to become what it is, a struggle to survive, upper and lower class, divisions, opinions, corporations, war and conflict, enslavement, the manipulation of media, but most importantly, it is the power structure that has shaped our history and is the reason our children will grow up in an unbalanced world.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you want to know what it is? It is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
The Order of the Quest, Freemasonry, the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, the Knights Templar, the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta, the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Priory de Sion, the Thule Society, or sometimes known as the Thule Society, the Order, the Skull and Bones, the Russell Trust, the Jason Society, the Scroll and Key, the Illuminati, and I could go on and on and on and on.
Throughout recorded history, mankind has dreamt of building the perfect society, an empire that might somehow satisfy the needs of every man. An ancient legend cast the shadows of one such society that is said to have existed long ago. 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato set down a dialogue called the Critias. He recounted the story of an ancient Greek poet and statesman named Solon. Solon had journeyed to Egypt in search of wisdom to help the government of his beloved Greece. The Greeks had been beset with factions and troubles, so Solon took counsel from the priests of the city of Sais. An old priest told him, "O Solon, Solon, you Greeks are never anything but children. There is no old opinion handed down among you, nor any science that is white with age." The old priest then proceeded to tell him the story of the lost city of Atlantis. In the centuries that would follow, scholars and researchers have debated whether Plato's Atlantis was intended to be an account of real history or simply an allegorical myth. Some even suggest that Atlantis was really the antediluvian world, the wicked society destroyed by the wrath of God in the great flood of Noah. In the 20th century, Plato's account was further supported by Masonic philosopher Manly P. Hall. Hall claimed that Atlantis had once been a vast and mighty empire that extended to the whole world, a philosophic commonwealth of nations that one day was destined to be rebuilt. But who would rebuild it? And exactly who was Manly P. Hall?
Manly P. Hall was probably the most highly esteemed occultist and Freemason of the 20th century.
Hall authored over 200 books and is said to have given some 8,000 lectures on ancient philosophy. He is perhaps most remembered for his contribution to the mysterious Brotherhood of Masonry. Upon his death in 1990, the Scottish Rite Journal, a Masonic publication, noted that he was often called, quote, Masonry's greatest philosopher. Among his teachings was that contained in Masonry and all the secret orders was the ancient wisdom of lost Atlantis. Hall wrote that for more than 3,000 years, secret societies had been laboring to create a background of knowledge necessary to the establishment of an enlightened democracy among the nations of the world. According to Hall, these societies could be traced back to ancient Egypt and had for centuries known of a secret place hidden from the eyes of common men, a place that would one day be revealed. In the 17th century, as settlers were colonizing the New World, Sir Francis Bacon, the leader of secret societies in England, set down his classic work, The New Atlantis. While archaeologists and treasure hunters have searched the globe looking for the lost continent, 400 years ago, Bacon, like many of his contemporaries, believed that Atlantis was America itself. While many of the early settlers came to work the land for the cause of religious freedom, there were with them secret societies who came to the New World with another agenda.
Secret societies came to America shortly after the Pilgrims arrived, and they were sent by a man named Sir Francis Bacon.
You get this very strange mixture of people, many of whom understood even then the advantage, spiritually and otherwise, to having secret orders.
Unless you understand the influence of the occult societies on the development of America, on the establishment of America, upon the course of America, why you get completely lost studying our history.
And they were the ones through which this work was being put into operation in England, in Europe, and eventually in America and the world.
So that America then could be used to lead the world into the philosophic empire. You understand that America was founded by Christians as a Christian nation. However, there were always those people on the other side who wanted to use America use our military power and our financial power to establish enlightened democracies throughout the world and restore lost Atlantis.
Yeah, maybe Bacon had it right. Maybe Atlantis is not something yet to occur, but maybe it's occurring right now in America.
In his lifetime, Sir Francis Bacon referred to himself as the herald of a new age. He promoted a new universal order for the whole world. Can this be what early American founders referred to with the words Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages? And does this vision affect America today?
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.
Secret societies can be traced back to the Egyptian mystery schools and the religious centers of Sumerian city-states. As time moved forward, the secrets of the ages were kept from the general public, and only those deemed worthy were able to begin their schooling of the esoteric teachings. Initiates were taught the true history of civilizations past and the religious teachings of several ancient cultures. The philosophical and spiritual ideals of nearly all religions were accessed in one single source, and as new beliefs and ideals were established, these too were adapted, and several branches of the mystery schools were able to form. It is here where we may begin to trace the roots of Freemasons. Freemasonry is the most established and influential fraternal organization which can be found throughout history. It has remained elusive and intact, evolving and shaping the way we live in nearly all aspects of life. It is the starting point of nearly all secret societies found throughout the world, and all branches of government and commerce in our modern world is a product of the influence of Freemasonry. Every major city or community in the world contains a Masonic lodge or a temple, and it is Freemasons whom have created the communities that these buildings belong to. Just as the ziggurats of Sumeria and the pyramids of Egypt, it has been the keepers of ancient knowledge whom have crafted our planet and built the centers of control and temples of worship throughout our existence. If you take a moment to look around your community, you will notice that everything from the street names, government centers, town halls, parks, lakes, rivers, city names, religious centers, law enforcement buildings, and businesses are named after Masons that were either a part of your community or had an influence on the development of your community. As revealed by the mystery teachings, one may achieve a sense of immortality by leaving a legacy on Earth before they die and pass on into the afterlife. Many have been immortalized on Earth through works of art, writings, inventions and theories, and essentially anything they have created or established. It is for this reason the Mason is honored on plaques and monuments throughout the world. Because it has existed for centuries, it has developed into a perfect system of control where there are multi-levels of initiation. Similar to the Church, there are various levels or degrees, and in order to move on into other stages of enlightenment, you must first pass several tests and be deemed ready or capable to receive the teachings of higher degrees. Most common Freemason lodges are known as the Blue Lodge, where its members belong to a local community and only end up achieving the 3rd degree, or Master Mason. Many Freemasons join the Brotherhood to simply contribute to their society, or become involved in the development of their community, and include tradesmen, bankers, judges, business owners, religious figures, mayors and political figures, teachers, and several other members of importance in the maintenance of a community. A majority of these Masons are harmless in the fact that they only want to maintain the flow of the society that they belong to. However, several Masons progress into higher degrees and become members of other secret societies that have stemmed from Freemasonry. Many scholars and researchers trace Freemasonry back to the Knights Templar in the Middle Ages. However, it is to my belief that its esoteric teachings date back much further. The Knights Templar were simply an order of knights created by the Church to provide a military for itself to protect the wisdom and stronghold of not only the Church, but of the empires established at the time. The Templars were also the first bankers in history, having gained much wealth from the loans made to kings and royal houses during times of war and conquest. This allowed for the strengthening of the Church as Christianity continued to influence a majority of the masses. It is likely that Freemasonry can be traced back to the conception of Christianity and its sub-religions and the various authors of the Quran, Kabbalah, and the Holy Bible. As royal houses continued to maintain their power, Freemasonry and the ancient teachings, along with newer religious concepts, were used to ensure that the power was never lost, and could never be lost as history moved onward. The bloodlines of royal descendants remained protected as long as these systems of power were in place, and a secret society existed to be able to filter out any threats to the crown. New empires were built, and Christianity was developed to become the world's religion, intended to replace all other religious doctrines that would take root or were already established. Essentially, Christianity and many other similar practices are Masonic religions. As stated earlier, Christianity was heavily influenced by older religions such as the Egyptian and Sumerian beliefs. The writings found in various books of the Bible contain stories of metaphorical half-truths and hidden meanings. The Bible is meant for interpretation, and only those enlightened to the true decipherings of these stories have been allowed access to the truth, or the light. Many key political figures, monarchs, philosophers, religious and military figures throughout the ages have claimed descendancy from biblical figures, or claimed to be descendants from tribes mentioned in the Bible. In modern times, the Red Cross is known for being an established blood donor organization and is overseen by Masonic institutions. The symbol of the Knights Templar is also the Red Cross, as they were known to be the keepers of the Holy Bloodline, or the blood of Christ, referred to by many as the Holy Grail. The importance of the royal bloodline can be traced back to Sumerian and Egyptian demigods, half humans and half gods, and is the reason why many of our world's rulers are so closely related. They have maintained their power and control over the empires for centuries, and by the use of Freemasonry have been able to establish new empires and city-states, and ensure that all religious, political, and economic activities are protected and allowed to function without any interruptions or hindrances. Many symbols are used with multiple level interpretations to show that it is a part of the secret order of the ages. Evidence of this can be found on the coat of arms of families and royal houses, on flags, logos, and emblems, and on billboards and advertisements. They can be found on your currency no matter which part of the world you live in, and they can be found through various media outlets such as music and television. Once one is aware of just how great an influence it has had on their lives, and is able to translate the meanings of these symbolic images, the world becomes alive with a whole new light, telling a story to the few who are able to make the connections, while remaining hidden in plain sight to the majority of the world's population. The placement of symbols is so effective because just as in early cave drawings and Egyptian hieroglyphs, it tells a story without the use of words and can be interpreted on varying levels. A simple lion or an eye can mean much more than the average person would suspect. As a Mason advances through the various degrees, they are taught the differing meanings of the symbols until its true revelation is achieved. Although lower-level Masons do not receive the teachings of the higher degrees of the craft, they play an integral role in the structure of the Masonic Foundation as they act as its defense to protect the organization from accusations of corruption, scandals, or wrongdoings. Although a majority of Masons are not responsible for the blemishes which have scarred human history, it is the higher levels and more occult-based secret societies which have been influenced by the hierarchy of Freemasonry that move on to greater seats of power on the world stage, such as Skull and Bones, Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group, and the Bohemian Club. These secret clubs and organizations were created to maintain the control over political and financial aspects, whereas the Knights Templar, prior to Sion, the Rosicrucians, were established to maintain the spiritual and religious aspects of control. Agencies such as the United Nations, CIA, MI5, FBI, KGB, and NSA were created to provide the backbone for intelligence and military matters and oversee issues of national security and law enforcement. All matters of life as we know it are strictly controlled and governed, and it is for this reason that secret societies have remained such an item of controversy and elusiveness throughout the course of evolution of history.
Now a question. What have Herbert Hoover, Art Linkletter, Jack London, and Richard Nixon all had in common? Well, they've all been members of the exclusive all-male Bohemian Club in California, where every year at this time the elite from around the country get together for 2.5 weeks of fun and games. Steve Shepard has this special assignment report.
More than 2,000 members of San Francisco's exclusive and all-male Bohemian Club have once again descended on Northern California. These men will spend most of the month of July encamped on some 2,700 acres of pristine and privately owned redwood forest. Forest very much like this. The place is called Bohemian Grove, and it's located just 80 miles north of San Francisco. The Grove is the Bohemian Club's summer retreat, and its facilities are hidden beneath lush forest canopy extending south from the banks of Sonoma County's Russian River. For more than a century, the camp has been a place where club members and guests from all across America gather to relax. The retreat is divided into dozens of small camps, the most prominent of which is called Mandalay. Among its members are businessmen like Leonard Firestone and Edgar Kaiser, and political figures like Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, William French Smith, and George Shultz. President Reagan, Vice President Bush, and Defense Secretary Weinberger are members of other camps. Richard Nixon is a Bohemian, and so are high-ranking executives of such companies as Eastern Airlines, Standard Oil of Indiana, and Bank of America. For the most part, the men of Bohemian Grove are over 50, highly successful, and, according to many employees, politically conservative. Membership in the Grove is by invitation only, and is determined by such factors as social standing, occupation, and personal connections. Privacy is one of the Grove's most cherished virtues. Members may not photograph, record, speak, or write about activities at the retreat. Sociology professor William Dumhoff found out enough to write a book on the place.
Well, I think it's a playground for the powerful. It's a place where wealthy men from all of the United States gather for 2 weeks to relive summer camp with this ceremony called the cremation of care that begins the 2-week encampment where the body of dull care, symbolizing woes and concerns, is burned on an altar in front of a big owl statue. When that ceremony ends, they all start to cheer and yell and hand each other a beer.
Discussions at the Grove in the 1930s helped lead to the development of nuclear power and the atomic bomb. It was at the Grove in 1967 that Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan hashed out differences over their presidential ambitions. Each year, guests like Henry Kissinger or Zbigniew Brzezinski address members on their areas of expertise. Presidential counselor Edwin Meese will be among this year's speakers. And each year, other guests come to the Grove simply to enjoy themselves. This year, CIA Director William Casey is a scheduled guest of John McCone, former CIA Director.
And what you're looking at here, staggeringly, is a group of people, some of the most famous people in America, in long gowns. Behind them there, you see a 40-foot stone owl. And there's the fire between them, next to the lake at Bohemian Grove. Now, one might wonder, understandably, why the people that run the banking, political, economic system and the media in America should be dressed in long robes doing a ceremony to a 40-foot stone owl. I think we should be told.
Year after year, he burned me in this room, lifting your puny shouts of triumph to the stars. But when again, he turned your faces to the marketplace, do ye not find me waiting as of old? Fools! Fools to dream ye conquer terror!
She was part of a team that successfully recorded part of the initiation ceremony that takes place in the tomb's courtyard.
Okay, you have the doorway here.
Yeah.
Okay, then to the right you have a hedge, and then you have an evergreen tree. If you follow that line straight back, courtyard's in there.
Oh, okay.
So
that's where they have the ceremonies in
the outdoor part of it. Part of it was indoors, so we only got to see the outdoor part.
Right.
We only got to, and to listen to the outdoor part. God only knows what went on indoors.
And what did you hear? What was it you know? You managed to get this unique
it was
access
disgusting. It was gross. I mean, they were pretending to murder people.
What was the tone of it, though? Was it jokey or was it quite...
No, it wasn't jokey at all. It was sick. That's about the only way I can describe it. It was sick.
What you're hearing is the first recording ever made of the Skull and Bones initiation ceremony. it has never been broadcast before. 15 new members of the club are being introduced into the macabre rituals of Skull and Bones by the senior students who are about to graduate. The club has what some might see as a strange fascination with death, skulls and bones. There's the chants too, difficult to hear first of all, but including the devil equals death and death equals death.
But when you get into a secret society of spirit worshippers, then, and especially when you're invited there by the direction of the higher-ups in the spirit world, you never get out of there alive. The high priest of our society, secret society, has been told that the master has very special plans for you too.
Now, what did he mean by the master?
Satan. And we were interested to hear more about it. And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing, he says, among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood, and God did not bear with him like he does with people that make mistakes today. So we're in a warfare, good against evil. And we happen to be the evil ones, but we're not that bad. He says, I look at this business between the forces of good and evil. He says, you believe in one person believes in God, and everyone believes in Lucifer. It's like politics.
So the great controversy is real, and you heard someone talk about it that's on the other side.
Like the priest mentioned, there's thousands of spirit worshippers in only different societies of spirit worshippers in this world. But he says we are the elite. We know the real truth about the master and his angels. And they are not hideous-looking beings. They are gorgeous creatures. To find a way of being able to get total control of people's minds. And that would be done by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introduce it as a new science for the benefit of mankind.
So part of what the high priest told you was Satan's strategy to take total control of people's minds.
They could then use people of great renown, educators, people of capacity.
If we look at this diagram, we will see the basic structure of the secret Illuminati. Back in 1776, they structured the Illuminati with 13 positions. But around the time of the American Civil War, they restructured it somewhat so that what they created was this first level, your anarchy level here, and then a hierarchy level, and then your special committees and councils. They're very similar to what we saw on our diagram, where you had your, remember on your Gnostic religions, where you had your broad mass religions and your initiate group. On the anarchy level, you'll find thousands of different witchcraft groups that each have their own rituals and their own beliefs, and they look disassociated and unorganized and unrelated. But then, if you are selected to go beyond that, you will enter the hierarchy level, and as a little girl, for instance, you would be part of Sisters of Light, and then as a teenager you'd be inducted into the Mothers of Darkness, and then you would progress to the Grandmother level. And they have many special committees and councils. For instance, your council of 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, your Grand Druid Council, your committee of 300, your committee of 500. Over here, you see represented again that same three-tiered pattern that I was talking about, and this is the Satanic Brotherhood, which is organized in hubs. The Satanic Brotherhood and Illuminati are like this. They're essentially one organization, except the Illuminati is technically Gnostic dualism. They believe that your good deeds must balance your bad deeds. If you were to follow the life of somebody that was inducted through one of the Illuminati orders, like the Order of the Skull and Bones, you'll see that they are tapped as a candidate for first year or knight and a patriarch, may rise to leadership within the Skull and Bones. From there you'll see that they progress to the Council of Foreign Relations, whose equivalent is the Royal Institute of International Affairs, then to the Round Table groups, and then to the Pilgrim Society. The Pilgrim Society is far more powerful than Council of Foreign Relations, although very few people know about it and talk about it.
Here are the facts. On May 1st, 1776, a Bavarian professor named Adam Weishaupt founded a group called the Illuminati, or Illuminated Ones. Historians don't always agree on all of the group's goals, but those goals did include the abolition of organized religion and the destruction of the nation-state. In a word, anarchy. But that wasn't uncommon at the time. Many Enlightenment-era intellectuals condoned some form of benign anarchy. Weishaupt's group differed initially in its strategic spread. Members of the Illuminati infiltrated the lodges of Freemasons to gain influence and power. Oddly enough, this plan was a success. The Freemasons were already a secretive organization, and they had a penchant for welcoming freethinkers like Weishaupt into their fold. Members of the Illuminati rose to positions of leadership in Freemason lodges throughout Europe, and they did so in secret. Weishaupt's group developed a system of codes and secret gestures to preserve their covert order, and only the Illuminatists at the top of the organization knew the full extent of their plan. However, the Illuminati themselves had internal conflicts, and soon former members came to the authorities with ominous stories and accounts of strange rites and dangerous, world-changing schemes. This created an uproar in the establishment, and by 1785 officials in Bavaria ordered both the Illuminati and the Freemasons suppressed. After this, it becomes difficult to track the group. Some members doubtlessly went underground, and some conspiracy theorists believe Illuminati members triggered the French Revolution. Although details of the group's actions remain fuzzy, most mainstream historians agree that the Illuminati fizzled out and disappeared after 1785. Or did they? Historians differ on some details of the Illuminati and its founder, but agree that Weishaupt was both a real person and the real founder of the Illuminati. After Bavarian officials ordered the group suppressed, Weishaupt fled Ingolstadt and settled in Gotha in 1787, where he renounced his connection to secret societies and passed away in 1830. To some, this death marks the end of the Illuminati, but to others Weishaupt's death was far less important than outsiders suppose. In fact, they don't believe he founded Illuminism so much as he revived it, and the Illuminati, according to some conspiracy theorists, aren't Bavarian at all. Here's where it gets crazy. Many conspiracy theorists believe the Illuminati's origins date back into prehistory, operating under different names throughout the ages, including the Brotherhood of the Snake. Conspiracy theorists such as William Bramley believe that this secret society can be found in Sumerian scriptures that mention the Anunnaki, who are alternately described as aliens, angels, or gods. The creatures allegedly came from another planet and created human beings as a race of servants. Weird stuff. Here's where it gets even crazier. Theorists like David Icke believe the ancient aliens bred with human beings, creating a race of hybrids. According to Icke, many of the world's elites are descended from these hybrid bloodlines. He also believes these beings can shapeshift between reptilian or human forms. And who are these Illuminati exactly? Ike has named everyone from the banking families to U.S. presidents, European royalty and celebrities as members of this secret, not entirely human organization. In Ike's view, the Illuminati have therefore been with human beings for a long, long time, and have consolidated control over the world's media, its finance, and governments. With such outlandish claims about the Illuminati's origin, it's necessary to dig up some proof, and that's the problem. While it is true that Sumerian records describe a mythic Anunnaki, there is no hard evidence that these creatures were real, rather than works of folklore or religious fiction. Additionally, it was not uncommon for secret societies in the 18th and 19th centuries to create a mythology about their group's origin, pretending to descend from ancient figures such as Hermes or Thoth. These claims of eldritch magical beginnings added a certain allure to organizations. Skeptics are quick to dismiss these claims as smoke and mirrors. But here's the catch for the conspiracy theorists. If these elites actually do control everything, then they have the ability to rewrite history, covering their tracks. In this context, the absence of any proof is occasionally seen as a vindication of the conspiracy theorist beliefs. Adam Weishaupt was a real man, and the Bavarian Illuminati was a real organization. But did Weishaupt found the Illuminati, or did he simply revive a much older, more secretive group?
In 1775, Weishaupt was summoned to the House of Rothschild by Mayor Amschel Rothschild to begin the organization of a secret society which would be able to gain control of the world through the governance of resources and finances, militarily, and through the means of reason and logic. The group's ideals were heavily drawn from the philosophies of Enlightenment-era pioneers such as Christian Wolff and Isaac Newton, whom were also famous Freemasons of the era. By 1776, the first chapter of the Order of the Perfectibilists was formed in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, which later became known as the Order of the Illuminati. It saw religion as a hindrance to its goals of creating a one-world government system, and therefore denounced God and other religions, and saw itself as the opposing force, or satanic in nature. The group was adapted by members whom saw themselves as being enlightened, or possessed the light of Lucifer, and gained the attention of many atheists. The group structure was created using the same system as Freemasonry, with various levels and groups assigned to specific duties in carrying out the agenda of their goals and intentions. The group's philosophies began to spread very quickly throughout Masonic lodges in Europe and eventually making its way to the lodges in North America as well. In 1784, an Illuminati member named Lanz was struck by lightning and killed in Ratisbon while traveling on horseback to deliver top-secret Illuminati documents. When Bavarian officials searched the contents of his saddlebags, they became aware of the existence of the Order of the Illuminati and found plans which outlined the details of the coming French Revolution. The Bavarian government attempted to alert France of the approaching danger. However, due to the influence of Masonry and members of the Illuminati in both governments, the French government failed to do anything about the warning. Many members of the Illuminati were arrested by Bavarian officials, as the group was then banned outright. However, due to its influence in the Masonic lodges of Europe, it simply went underground. Upon raiding the home of an Illuminati member named von Zwack, Bavarian officials discovered additional documents which became known as the 25 Goals of the Illuminati, which essentially called for the worldwide revolution which would be the great work of the secret societies. Weishaupt and many other members left Bavaria to find refuge in other areas in Europe and were successfully able to influence on a greater scale as a direct result. After fleeing Bavaria, Weishaupt received the assistance of a well-known Freemason and Duke in Gotha, named Ernest II of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg, whom has blood relations to today's royal bloodline of the House of Windsor, formerly known as the House of Saxe-Coburg in Gotha. With the assistance of royalty and in exile, Weishaupt was able to write many new works, and in 1786 wrote a piece called Apologies of the Illuminati, where he seemed apologetic and attempted to distance himself from his earlier beliefs and practices. By this time, however, it was much too late, as the Illuminati gained more acceptance by supporters of the ideals of the Enlightenment and a vast amount of Freemasons throughout the world. In 1789, violence erupted in France, and the French Revolution overthrew their existing government and attempted to abolish Christianity from the nation. Additionally, a half-naked prostitute was placed on the altar of the Cathedral of Notre Dame and was extolled as the goddess of reason. Meanwhile, in America, John Adams won the 1796 election, likely due to his opposition to Freemasonry, and his son, John Quincy Adams, was noted as stating, "I do conscientiously and sincerely believe that the order of Freemasonry, if not the greatest, is one of the greatest moral and political evils." This had little effect, however, as just 2 years later, in 1798, George Washington acknowledged that Illuminati activities were being practiced in America, and went on to say, "It is not my intention to doubt that the doctrine of the Illuminati and its principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more satisfied of this fact than I am." As the years passed, the doctrines of the Illuminati went on to inspire the concepts behind communism and other modern forms of government systems. The symbol of the Illuminati, the all-seeing eye, can be found on today's American currency and is essentially what led to the creation of several occult and satanic-based religions and secret societies. The 25 goals of the Illuminati are essentially what makes up the agenda of the New World Order, or a one-world government system, and outlines the methods of obtaining this goal. Obviously influenced by the Enlightenment and the Illuminati, an unknown Freemason known only by his false identity of R.C. Christian created a modern monument known as the American Stonehenge, or the Georgia Guidestones. The goals outlined on the monument are an indication that the Illuminati was not dissolved, that it is alive and well, having been allowed to continue and evolve through the lodges of Freemasonry around the world.
Built out on a small flat area in the nearby Appalachian Mountains of Georgia stand these huge slabs of granite. On the surface of the stones are etched what look like some kind of new 10 Commandments in 8 different languages. English, Arabic, Chinese, Hebrew, Hindi, Russian, Spanish, and Swahili. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Along the capstone of the Georgia Guidestones, sitting on top of the monument, is a message written in 4 ancient languages: Babylonian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Sanskrit, and classical Greek. The message says, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason." Gary Jones is the editor of the local newspaper, the Elberton Star. I asked him about the Georgia Guidestones. I wanted to know what the Guidestones were and who built them.
Around 1980, a gentleman came to town, supposedly, and went to a local banker and asked the local banker to help him locate a granite company that would enable him to erect a monument for the future. His name was R.C. Christian. It was a moniker that he gave himself to deal with the local people, and he didn't want anybody to know who he was. When you see these guidestones, you'll understand that we're talking about something much larger than your average monument. So, you know, the idea was to help Mr. Christian find someone who could operate on that grand scale. It's eerily similar to Stonehenge, and it's built so that at certain times of the year you know, the sun comes through and the shadows that it casts and so forth and so on. So it's really a neat thing. I think that what they've got inscribed on those stones are something that someone thought out and thought out thoroughly. When they were first erected, I think they had some cult groups come in and do some, I don't know, spend the night out there. Some people think that it might encourage you know, elimination of overpopulated areas. It's a message to a future generation. Just the way Stonehenge is, just the way the pyramids are in Egypt. So yeah, I mean, the guide stones are going to be here for a long, long time. The Cherokee Indians call this part of the world the center of the universe. There are Masons here who may have had some influence on the guide stones.
Once I realized I had met an honest, genuine, high-level Freemason who told me there were 13 levels of Freemason above the 33rd degree, and that these people were God. There was no God, they were God. So I asked them about their plans to kill people, and they said, yes, there are too many people on the planet. We need to get rid of several billion. And war doesn't seem to work, so we're going to use disease and starvation.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future.
In the push to reduce global warming, children, according to some, are the new culprits. A think tank in the UK says too many kids are what's making the planet worse, saying large families, anything over 2 children really, should be frowned upon as an environmental no-no, akin to not reusing your plastic bags, driving one of those big gas-guzzling cars, taking long trips overseas.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
In the draft copy of the United Nations Global Biodiversity Assessment, it states very clearly that we must reduce the human population from what's current level of about 6 billion people down to about 1 billion people.
Our presidents can now, on their own, order assassinations, including American citizens, operate secret military tribunals, engage in torture, enforce indefinite imprisonments without due process, order searches and seizures without proper warrants, gutting the Fourth Amendment, ignore the 60-day rule for reporting to the Congress the nature of any military operation as required by the War Powers Resolution, continue the Patriot Act abuses without oversight, wage war at will, treat all Americans as suspected terrorists at airports with TSA groping and nude X-ray. And the Federal Reserve accommodates by counterfeiting the funds needed and not paid for by taxation and borrowing, permitting runaway spending, endless debt, and special interest bailouts. And all of this is not enough.
A van pulled alongside of me, and it turned out to be the property owner. And he greeted me, and he was by himself, and so we had a good little dialogue there, and I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia that knew about them. And he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. And he says there's 100, at that time he said there was 125,000 there. And they were stacked, he told me 15 high.
President Obama has put in place a reform apparatus reviving the euthanasia of Hitler Germany in 1939 that began the genocide there. The apparatus here is to deny medical care to elderly, chronically ill and poor people, and thus save, as the President says, $2 to $3 trillion by taking lives considered not worthy to be lived, as the Nazi doctors said.
The earth just cannot handle the sheer number of humans who live here. Something has to give. And I believe that it's up to us who have lived a good life to make sure that our children will have the opportunity to live good lives too. I have lived a good life.
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 The policy of reducing our numbers on this planet has been the model of the British Empire throughout history, and wherever they are, genocide will follow. Today there are 12 million people at risk of starvation in the Horn of Africa, but that threat is in no way localized, as this year's global grain harvest was exactly half of what our current 7 billion global population needs to survive. It's not just a question of halting the genocide of thermonuclear war. The genocide has already begun, and London's puppet in the White House has enforced that policy globally for the benefit of the empire.
This is Esther. At first, I thought she was a boy. And this is her older brother, Sam. Their behinds were shriveled and laced with deep lines left by their shrinking body mass. Their legs were tiny bones covered in dried out skin. It was clear to me that starvation had pushed these helpless kids to the verge of death. This little boy is 7 years old. Look at the size. Look at my camera. 7 years old. What are we gonna do? Severe malnutrition leads to death. It stunts growth and forces the body to turn on itself for food. Sam is under 3 feet tall and weighs under 20 pounds. Both Sam and Esther were also afflicted with polio. Neither of them could walk. We could not imagine why they were abandoned, left starving, lying hopelessly in the dirt. As we tried to absorb the nightmare before us and figure out what we should do, a little girl emerged from the bush. This little girl is the sister of those 2 little boys, and she was actually cooking for them at one point. Can you imagine? It was Sam and Esther's older sister, Jane, a very small 8-year-old. She had walked miles to fetch water in order to bathe her brother and sister. We and our cameras attracted a crowd. The sight of the kids paralyzed the crowd. They could only stand in horror and watch. We watched in utter fascination as this little determined girl bathed her siblings. While most 8-year-olds are busy playing, Jane faced a life-and-death situation alone. She could not feed her hungry brother and sister, but she could see how dirty they were, and it was within her power to take a long walk for some water, lug it back, and bathe the kids. Little Jane, a hungry child herself, assumed the awesome duties of a parent. To look into the face of a suffering child is to see the depth of humanity and the heart of God, and we are able to drop all vestiges of our selfishness and desire nothing more than to see another experience relief and joy. Most organized religions, sadly, devote much of their time and energy to defending dogma or destroying dissidents. When kneeling before a fragile little boy like Sam, those kind of petty and immature religious practices dissolve into a sea of insignificance. Love is all that matters, and love compels us to reach out to Sam and Esther.
The world in which most of us live has become a civilization based from class values, where in order to be accepted, we must conform to a capitalist infrastructure designed to bring in as much profits as possible. There exist several thousand companies that make immense amounts of profits from charging people money for the necessities for survival, and because of this, any single person, culture, or community that does not participate in its vicious cycle simply goes without. A vast amount of these corporations are in control of the food and energy supply, and although they create much of the food that is required for the world's population, still, millions of people starve, and there have been obvious divisions in place. As governments around the world promote the ideas of overpopulation and global warming, many new strategies, policies, and programs have been set in place to decrease the human population, and these strategies are not particular to a single country or nation. These methods have existed for thousands of years and can be divided into two categories: soft kill techniques and hard kill techniques. As starvation still occurs in many parts of the world, this can be identified as a hard kill method of population control. Other forms of hard kill techniques include war, natural disasters, epidemics and disease, and nuclear catastrophe. Soft kill techniques are less obvious and are covertly applied to a population as it's not designed to kill instantaneously, such as the methods used in a hard kill scenario. Oftentimes, soft kill techniques are meant to only shorten a lifespan or kill off select groups of people. They also exist in the forms of diseases, viruses, and bacteria, and is the reason why there has been so many food and product recalls in recent years.
So the president of IG Farben was convicted of crimes against humanity. Now, he's a sort of artistic fellow and creative. He was the one who was responsible for the slogan that people saw as they entered Auschwitz, usually for the last time. Arbeit macht frei. Work brings freedom. Creative sort of fellow. So he was sitting in jail and he said, well, that didn't work. What else can we do? I've got it. Food. He who controls food controls the world.
The state says the fruit is probably linked to a deadly outbreak of bacteria sweeping across the country and hitting New Mexico especially hard. New at 10, Action 7 News reporter Todd Unger is following the recall announcement.
Yeah, guys, these numbers are concerning. 3 dead, 10 cases, and more suspected cases being evaluated right now. What's it all mean? Watch what you eat.
Canada's Food Inspection Agency has once again expanded its recall of contaminated beef. This time, consumers are being warned to steer clear of several types of cuts. The Food Safety Agency has come under criticism for what critics have said is a delayed response to the crisis.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is being criticized for not sounding an alarm about potential health risks sooner.
From the very first detection of E. coli, CFIA waited 2 weeks to issue a recall.
And we are addressing to improve the process related to the challenge that we face.
The recall is leading to questions about the reputation of Alberta's beef industry.
The best guess is that some infectious agent is causing it. Today, researchers here at the National Centers for Disease Control said they had found several cases where people who had been sex partners both had the condition. The scientists say this probably means they are dealing with some new, deadly, sexually transmitted disease. The investigators see this as a serious public health problem.
Farmers in the milk industry say it's safe, but studies suggest a link to cancer. Don't miss this special report.
Monsanto's engineered growth hormone did not comply with safety requirements. It could be absorbed by the body and therefore did have implications for human health. Mysteriously, that conclusion was deleted from the final published version of their report.
They knew there were problems. They saw serious potential human health problems, and they stood up in Canada and said, we're not going to approve this because we don't believe it's safe.
We have been pressured and coerced
to pass drugs of questionable safety, including the RBST. I personally was very concerned that there's a very serious problem of secrecy, conspiracy, and things of that nature, and something needs to be done.
The FDA was then on the hot seat. They had to come up with an answer. They didn't come up with a good one. And they never took the opportunity then. I mean, what would they do? Pull it off the market and say we need to now do the job that we didn't do the first time? They didn't do that.
From the time a child is born, it is raised within a system that is designed to restrict them from reaching their potential. Generation after generation has been bred with this system because the individual grows up to accept this way of life as the norm, and it is due to this fact that companies, corporations, financial institutions, and government systems have been allowed to develop over the decades and gain more and more control over the common people. We have all, from birth, allowed these systems to continue their operations and establish greater power and influence in an increasing amount of countries around the world. The agenda of the secret societies has become a reality in which we all play a part in, and the intent to consolidate control was established through the League of Nations, which is now known as the United Nations. This organization is a clear indication that the work of Freemasonry and the goals of the Illuminati are in full operation, and as more and more countries join the roster of the United Nations, a one-world court, government system, and military center point have been implemented and acts as the key decision-maker of global policies. The United Nations is the one world government system, and it was created by the British Empire and a majority of the major world powers at the time, just after World War I. Since its conception, it has shaped world policy and continues to act as the global decision-maker, while increasing its control over countries and their cultures around the world. The control of resources remains a top priority, and companies and corporations have been allowed to become monopolies in which a single corporation controls a vast majority of a particular resource or industry. Large amounts of profit are made from these industries such as forestry, mining, energy, raw materials, food production, and water. However, still much of the world goes without and is forced with a struggle for survival. Companies such as Monsanto have gained total control over the world market, allowing for increased prices to maximize their profit potential. With much of the competition not able to compete, total domination of the particular resource has been allowed to commence, and those who are not able to afford or have access to these resources are simply disregarded in the name of profit. In a day and age where free energy is discussed and things such as electric cars are an obvious reality, we still remain trapped within the clutches of a profit-driven world. When Nikola Tesla discovered free energy and presented his findings to potential investors and bankers, he was not aided because there was no monetary profits to be made from giving people free electricity. Instead, industry bankers such as J.P. Morgan invested their money towards Thomas Edison's inventions related to energy, as in this way a new market could be established with great financial gains. We still live in this state of mentality and control, and although many people are aware and oppose this system, they are merely protesting against the companies and corporations and not the primary source or reasoning. The best way of explaining this is by understanding that many people that are protesting this system are simply playing into the intentions of the establishment. In order to make vital changes in political policy, people must be opposed to something, and then the government body is able to change laws and regulations, allowing for new policies to form, while the organization, company, or corporation remains intact, able to continue its control over a specific area or industry. When people protest, they are simply protesting the effects or symptoms of the problem, and are not able to have any impact on the source of the effect or symptom. This scenario is similar to a knight in shining armor. The actual company or corporation is the sword or weapon that is causing the effects or symptoms, and the government body or organization such as the United Nations is its shield, protecting the source through a court or legal system. However, these organizations were created and are maintained by a source, as there has to be a knight controlling the sword and holding a shield. Whether we attack the weapon itself or the shield that protects it, the source of power often remains unscathed and allowed to continue for years to come. While people protest against financial institutions and corporations, the source of its power remains unseen and protected, which is why there have been countless revolutions, protests, and acts of civil unrest throughout the world, and nothing has changed because of it. Many of these protests have actually allowed for this system to gain more control over the people, which is all part of the plan. Without the source of the damage, we would not feel the effects or symptoms of the wound on humanity, and as we continue to protest, the elite sit back and wait for chaos to unfold, because out of chaos there is order, and our world leaders fully realize the power of controlling the energies of the planet.
This interbreeding produced the kings and queens and the elite royal families of the ancient world, where they claim their right, their genetic right to be the king or the queen or the leader because of their connection to the gods. And all over the world you find this. And what do we have today? We have the queen as head of state of this country purely because of her DNA. In Sumer you find the same. Sumer, which became Babylon, which became Iraq, has ancient texts and tablets which describe the same recurring global story of this interbreeding to create this hybrid race. The hybrid race became known as the demigods, part human, part God, because of this interbreeding connection. This hybrid bloodline went off across the world, up into Northern Europe. It became the power behind the Roman Empire and the creation of the Roman Church, which became, of course, global Christianity. And so today, these hybrid bloodlines are known as the Illuminati, the illuminated ones, and they're the ones that control the transnational corporations, governments, the banking system, the whole shebang that dictates and controls the direction of society.
It's a great thing for history.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, William Howard Taft, and President Barack Obama. One young girl traced them all back to one common ancestor.
They're all cousins and all grandsons of John Lackland.
It's the first family tree of its kind. Pouring through more than 500,000 names for months, 12-year-old Bridge Ann d'Avignon discovered that all the U.S. presidents, except Martin Van Buren, are related to the former King of England, John Lackland Plantagenet, signer of the Magna Carta in 1215.
Mildred Reed is his first great-grandmother on George Washington. And on Obama, Mildred Reed is the 10th great-grandmother.
It started as an assignment to research her own lineage, tracing it back to roots in France. But Bridge Ann wanted to branch out.
Well, I think we just all go back somewhere, or it's just a matter of proving it.
She started with George Washington, but unlike other professional genealogists that only looked at the male family lines, Bridge Ann was able to link the presidents together using both male and female ancestry. Before this, historians had only been able to link 22 family trees.
She kind of created a triumph of women's studies here.
Bridge Ann also figured out she's an 18th cousin of President Obama, something she hopes to be able to share with him in person.
I've written a letter to Obama, but I just gotten standard reply. I hope to meet the president and explain it to him.
Let me take you through this, branch by branch.
The 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault.
Vice President Dick Cheney, the man who's only a heartbeat away from the presidency, is actually a blood relation. He's President Bush's 9th cousin once removed. Cheney's cousin Barack Obama is also Bush's 11th cousin and the 9th cousin of Brad Pitt. But we're only just getting started. President Lincoln was President Bush's 7th cousin 5 times removed, and Bush shared more than just a ballot with John Kerry. That's right, they're 9th cousins twice removed. There's also royalty in the Bush bloodline. Princess Diana was Bush's 11th cousin twice removed. And then there's this bombshell.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Sure, she may have been singing to JFK, but what about GWB? He is, after all, her 9th cousin 3 times removed. He's also related to Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, even Pocahontas, and Vlad the Impaler. Trace the family tree far enough, and you get Madonna, Celine Dion, and Tom Hanks.
These spiritual beings have been ruling this planet through very specific bloodlines, who long ago swore allegiance to these beings in exchange for wealth and power over the human race, in preparing the whole world for the ultimate spiritual deception these evil entities have planned. These bloodlines are literally able to be traced by genealogists all the way back to ancient Sumer and Babylonia, and these human familiars or pets of the demonic angels have worshipped Satan and his minions under many forms from the time of Sumer right up to our present day.
It can be said that a picture paints 1,000 words, and once one is aware of the decipherings and meanings of symbols, something as simple as a logo or shape can tell a story of 1,000 words or more. The study of symbolism allows for a better understanding of the secret societies, their agenda, and their members, and enables us to discover the impact it has had on our lives in the modern world. Much can be revealed by taking a look at a family's crest, a flag, or a shield, as all of the components that make up its design serve specific purposes and often relate to the history of the bloodline or entity the design is intended for. As we know, the Red Cross symbolizes the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, and is often associated with blood or related to health. It can also be found on several flags, including the United Kingdom's. A crown symbolizes royalty and is often connected to the plasma of the sun or the corona and is worn on the crown of the head. This is also where we find the crown chakra, which is the chakra that is thought to connect us with the gods or to heaven. Lions are also found on royal coats of arms, which some have crowns and some do not. Lions found wearing a crown are linked to royalty and is a symbol of the descendants from the house of David and the tribes of Judah. A lion also symbolizes a connection with the sun or fire, whereas a unicorn found on a crest represents the moon and is a female symbol representing a connection to a female goddess or deity. An eagle found on a shield or crest, such as the one in Freemasonry and of the Holy Roman Empire, represents anointing or as being selected to serve and is a fire symbol as well. The eagle has also been associated with the tribes of Dan in relation to the bloodlines. Now that we know a bit about the symbol's meanings, if we take a look at the Canadian coat of arms, which was designed after it declared independence from Britain, we can determine that it is a country controlled by royalty, as we can see the crowned lion that sits upon it. The coat of arms for the Windsor family, known as the Royal Coat of Arms, is intricately designed with many symbols which describes a great deal in regards to the family's history and bloodline origins. After we fully understand the implications of the various symbols found on the Royal Coat of Arms, we see the bigger picture and can understand many other crests used by families and on the flags of several countries. Colors also play an important role on flags and crests, and red is often associated with the bloodlines linked to royalty throughout the ages, or better known as the bloodlines of the Illuminati.
Do you know your blood type? The blood that flows through your veins contains your life force, and your blood group type can tell you a lot about your ancestors. Do you have O-Rh-D negative blood? O-Rh-D negative blood, or blue blood, sang azul in Spanish, is a very ancient bloodline. I am sure you've heard all the stories about the Holy Grail and Mary Magdalene moving to the south of France with the children of Jesus. Behind all stories there is some truth, and when you start to join the dots and bits and pieces of information that we do have, a story unfolds.
Did you know that 85% of all human beings have a monkey gene? The monkey gene is called the rhesus factor, or Rh factor, because it can be traced to the rhesus monkey. Chances are your blood type tests Rh positive, which means you've got the monkey gene. If by chance your blood type tests negative for the monkey gene, you are in a small minority of only 15% of the world's population. So what happens when an Rh negative woman gets pregnant with an Rh positive partner? Her body rejects, attacks, and kills the fetus, unless of course there's medical intervention. What is the cause of this strange breeding incompatibility within the human species? Are Rh negative people alien in some way?
These guys who are manipulating my mind and programming me for mind control purposes claim, and these criminals in control of our country as well, claim to be gods, demons, and aliens in order that I feel totally helpless, in order that I felt like they were beyond my realm to affect.
And we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference.
In 2012, not only did Britain host the Olympic Games, but the Queen also celebrated her Diamond Jubilee. The opening ceremony to the Olympic Games was a massive occult ritual with much symbolism used throughout, and the stadium that was built to host the event was specifically created to enhance the ritual's effects. The opening ceremony was carefully planned out so that the ceremony would increase the energies on the entire planet. With the involvement and attention of a majority of the world, the energies become increased along the ley lines of the earth, and this energy can then be controlled and manipulated. There is much information about this ritual and its effects which can be found online for further investigation into this subject. It was also no coincidence that James Bond, 007, escorts Queen Elizabeth from Buckingham Palace in a sequence that was a part of the opening ceremony called The Arrival. In this scene, James Bond is shown arriving at the palace and picking up Queen Elizabeth, where they then enter a helicopter and fly through London. When they arrive at the Olympic Stadium, they parachute out of the helicopter, which exhilarated audiences around the world. Not only was the scene with James Bond used as a promotional stunt for the latest Bond movie, but it also served a much deeper, hidden meaning with occult inspiration. The creator of the fictional character James Bond, Ian Fleming, created the character based off the actual founder of British intelligence, John Dee. Not only is Dee accredited for founding British intelligence, but he was also a highly esteemed alchemist, occultist, mathematician, astrologer, author, sorcerer, and mystic. He is best known as being the personal advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, and he signed all of his documents and correspondences with the Queen with the sigil of 007. Ian Fleming incorporated the 007 with the James Bond character, which is also why it was John Dee, aka James Bond, who escorted Queen Elizabeth II to the 2012 Olympic Games. The formations of some of the opening ceremony and much of the symbolism can be linked to John Dee's glyph, known as the Monad, in which Dee wrote a book about it, called the Monad Hieroglyph. Dee rose to power in very curious circumstances, as he was initially charged by Queen Mary for attempting to end her life using sorcery. When Queen Mary mysteriously died, Queen Elizabeth I took the throne, and Dee received a high position in the court as the Queen's personal advisor, magician, and intelligence leader. John Dee is also known for bringing the Rosicrucian Order to England, as he was the head of the Rosicrucian Order in Europe at the time. The Rosicrucian Order has its roots through the mystery schools of Egypt and is thought to have been established around 1500 BC. The successor of John Dee in regards to the occult and the Rosicrucian Order was none other than Sir Francis Bacon. Bacon is also accredited for the foundations of the modern English language and translating the King James Version of the Bible. It is thought that when he translated this version, he also altered it, incorporating Masonic and Rosicrucian symbolism and doctrine. John Dee had a strong influence on many contemporaries and on the British Empire.
Not only was Dee a scholar of the classics and the magical past, but he was an intimate friend with some of the great movers and shakers of his own time, particularly Sir Philip Sidney and the entire coterie of poets and artists who had gathered themselves around Elizabeth Astrea to celebrate her reign and to make of her the paradigmatic sovereign of Europe that Dee believed led the way toward the establishing of a universal alchemical monarchy. It was essentially a poetic enterprise, as alchemy always is. Merlin, in the Arthurian legends, has come down to us basically disguised as John Dee. The image we have of Merlin is Dee's image. So Dee possessed an enormous power over the imagination of his contemporaries. They were in awe of his learning.
Il demonio è pure dell'esorcista. L'esorcismo è lui che ha paura e non abbiamo paura noi. E sono contento di dare il botto al demonio. Quando mi dice il demonio che chi sei, io devo domandare, Satana. Ah, ora mi sei capitato, adesso ti ho dato un sacco di botte. Dunque, e quindi è lui che grida. Perché quando grida la persona, ci sono dei gridi qui delle suore che si sentono a volte fino in fondo, fino alla strada si sentono. Dunque nel giardino. Ma non è certamente la persona che grida, ma è il demonio che sente queste botte.
Martina and her parents have been coming to see Padre Alfredo regularly for the past 6 months. The family has turned to the exorcist in an attempt to solve problems which have troubled their daughter since she was 8 years old. Although Martina comes to the sessions willingly, as soon as she enters Padre Alfredo's bunker, she suffers a violent reaction. For her own safety, she has to be restrained before the exorcism can begin.
con l'inferno, vai!
Prende l'acqua, padre, prende l'acqua, l'acqua, prende l'acqua. Lasciami! Prende l'acqua.
Sì, ci ho pensato, ma...
L'acqua, l'acqua.
Non ci ho pensato.
L'acqua.
Sta buona? Sta buona, forse? Ci avevo pensato, Vincenzo, ci avevo pensato.
The exorcism consists of a ritual first formulated in 1614 and updated by the Vatican 2 years ago.
Nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo. Signore Gesù Cristo, Dio di Padre eterno Padre, Dio di grazia. Il nostro nome è stato benito, il Santo, è di Cristo, è di Cristo, è di Cristo. Ecco l'acqua del Spirito Santo. Il Devosuismo viene una forza particolare. Dunque ho notato questo, a volte il demonio, siccome l'esorcismo sono come potesse uno bastonate, picchia il demonio, no? E mette l'acqua santa nella mano, mi brucia, mi sono accorto di questo. Il demonio è furbo e cerca di parlare per riposarsi. Avete visto mai i pugili? Quando si danno i pugni, a un certo punto si abbracciano, si riposano, respirano un attimo. Il demonio fa la stessa tattica, dunque parla e io invece non bisogna dargli retta. Continuare l'esorcismo, in modo che non c'è tregua, sono botte. Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne. Maligno. Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne. Santa Maria, ma libera. Ma Maria, no, maligno, è Cristo più forte. Cacciale via, di la verità. Di la verità a questa signora, esiste o non esisti tu? Il demonio esiste o non esiste?
Esiste il demonio!
Come fai a dimostrarlo? Come fai a dimostrare che esiste?
Tutto!
Ma questo...
L'esisto! E chi non ci crede bene!
Ma questo...
The Necronomicon is a book of incantations to summon demons and spirits, and is highly popular in occult circles found throughout the ages. It is easily obtainable from several bookstores, and has been portrayed in many movies such as The Evil Dead, The Ninth Gate, The Necronomicon, and several others. The book was originally written in 738 AD in Damascus by Abdul al-Hazred, and was later translated by John Dee, and later popularized by H.P. Lovecraft. Most of the entities referred to in the Necronomicon are Sumerian gods, which we discussed earlier in this documentary, such as Marduk, Tiamat, and Kingu. However, there is also several similarities to Kabbalistic, Biblical, Babylonian, and Islamic concepts and symbolism. The book states that the teachings of the Necronomicon have been long forgotten by man, and only those who worship demons or the ancient ones still retain this knowledge. Also similar to ancient Sumerian beliefs, the book describes the Anunnaki, which can be described as meaning those of royal blood, or those who from heaven to earth came. The Anunnaki have been popularized in modern times by authors such as Zechariah Sitchin and Erich von Daniken, and has influenced the ancient astronauts theory, which has been recently promoted through the media. This theory depicts these ancient astronauts as being gods, interbreeding with humans to create the demigods, and being responsible for engineering the human race, creating mankind in their own image. In Sumerian beliefs, it names Enki as the one who genetically engineered mankind, and is similar to the Greek god Poseidon, The symbol of Enki and Poseidon is two entwined serpents, which represents the double helix of DNA and is used by today's medical profession. The Necronomicon describes a spiritual battle in where the dark gods, called the Ancient Ones or Old Ones, are cast out from the heavens to the darkest part of the universe, called the Agigi. These dark spirits or demons are waiting in the Agigi for a celestial event to occur, in which their priest, Cthulhu, and their leader, Azagthoth, will lead them out, in where Cthulhu will establish a kingdom on earth to bring a war to the ones in the heavens, called the Elder Gods. This story is paralleled in the Bible in Revelations 9:1, where Apollo ascends from the abyss onto earth bringing swarms of locusts. There are 9 gates in the Necronomicon, and each gate is guarded and ruled by a different entity. Of these 9 gates, there are 7 inner gates, referred to as the 7 gates or the 7 seals, and there is 2 outer world gates. These gates are created during rituals and represent different parallels or dimensions in our universe. The Kabbalah also describes similar parallels or universes and referred to them as Sephiroths. These Sephiroths have also been associated with the human chakra points, and the Necronomicon's Ladder of Light, with its 7 gates or steps, associates the same planets with each step as the Kabbalistic ladder. A ladder with 7 steps can also be found in older Hindu and Persian traditions, and the Masonic ladder of Kadosh and Jacob's ladder from the Bible are also similar stories of gateways or steps. Just as Albert Einstein described universe dimensions as being in spheres, so does the Necronomicon, and the spirits that reside within these spheres exist within extra dimensions, which exist in every point in space. These entities coincide in parallel universes, and with the right offerings or sacrifice can be summoned or brought into other dimensions and parallels. Various gestures are used to control the spirits, referred to as the signs of power, and symbolizes mankind's power over the spirits. These hand signs are done with the left hand, which is where the term left-hand path is derived from, and is often associated with evil or negative characters. A common sign we have seen world leaders using is the sign of Vur, which is used to ask something of the Old Ones, and is one of the 4 satanic signs. It is used when attempting to use the influence of the Old Ones to achieve a specific goal or purpose. The sign of Kish is also a commonly seen hand gesture, and is used to break down a barrier and open portals to the outside. The sign of Koth, commonly seen being used by politicians and other world leaders, is used to close the portals opened by the sign of Kish. The sign of the Elders is a protective gesture used for protection from the Watchers against threatening spirits. Once a specific spirit has been summoned, it is often uncontrollable and very unpredictable, and many people who attempt to use the Necronomicon, when not fully aware of its methods and potential, end up bringing forth dark forces into their lives, in which they cannot reverse. Several races are also mentioned in the Necronomicon, such as the Thule, which influenced the Thule Society, the Elders and the Old Ones, the Anunnaki, the Watchers, and the Migo. The Elders are the oldest of the races, and are gods that reside in the heavens. They are ruled by Anu, Enki, and Enlil, and known as the Great 3 Watchers. They have made a pact with humans so that they can be summoned by the use of rituals and magic, and created the spirits whose duty is to protect humans, called the Watchers. The Old Ones, or Ancients, are demons to the Christians, and are referred to as the Jinn to the Muslims. Jinn is also where the term genies originates from. Depending on the intentions of the magician, certain gods or demons can be summoned for various reasons, and some of these spirits come in the form of a dark presence or energy, while others are meant for positive purposes. Some of the gods, such as Cthulhu, referred by Aleister Crowley as the Beast 666, are able to possess the magician and can lead to unpredictable results. With a basic understanding of energies, one can understand the reasons in which someone would want to summon spirits and can alter certain people, events, or achieve specific goals or intentions. There are many stories of people whom have dabbled with black magic and have had severe consequences as a direct result, and is thought to be the explanation behind demonic possessions, and in many instances ends up as insanity or even death or suicide. Many people do not believe that summoning spirits and demons actually works, but the truth of the matter is that the power lies within the believer, or the eye of the beholder, and is the reason why people achieve altered states of consciousness during meditation and prayers. Many cultures use specific potions or mind-altering drugs, such as ayahuasca, to achieve higher levels of consciousness and to help tap into other dimensions and planes of existence, and an early recipe for LSD can also be found in older versions of the Necronomicon. The formula is called Space Mead and calls for the mixing of morning glory seeds soaked in wood alcohol. This formula is intended to increase the effectiveness of opening the gates and summoning the spirits. Many secret societies have incorporated aspects of these rituals into their own, and people like Aleister Crowley have developed powerful techniques and rituals to achieve greater outcomes. Just as we can find with the systems of nature, there is always a battle happening between positive and negative energies, and it is for this reason that the magician understands the capabilities of rituals and the practice of magic, alchemy, psychology, and nearly all aspects of life. It is also for this reason that many world leaders become involved in secret societies and the occult, and use this magic to shape and influence the world in which we live. There is a cure, however, and it lies within the hearts and minds of all people on earth, and through a better understanding and awareness, an age of great change can become a reality for us all. It's time to take a deep look within ourselves and discover who we really are, and realize just how much potential we have within us.
Facing our true inner self is virtually unknown in our world today. This is why no matter how many civilizations rise and fall, it is our collective consciousness that creates our governing apparatus, not individual people. And after countless attempts, you would imagine that people would realize that a physical retaliation may not be the solution. Yet here we are, thousands of years later, with technology that can clone DNA, vehicles that can break the sound barrier and probe the depths of space, and science that can overcome almost any sickness. Yet we still fail to take notice to the importance of thoughts and consciousness. This is the very definition of insanity. And every single one of us is responsible for this psychic epidemic, because we're killing the messenger and paying no attention to the message.
The human spirit, body, and mind are all important factors we must maintain in order to lead healthy and productive lives. Human life can be related to the life of a tree or a plant, in which once a human or a plant stops growing, it then dies and becomes broken down to replenish the earth in new ways. The important thing to remember in this scenario is that once we stop growing, we are then waiting to die, and it is quite unfortunate that many people are living a life in which they have allowed themselves to stop growing in spirit, body, and mind due to the world of bondage that has been bestowed upon us. Many people have given up or believe there is nothing that can be done to change the world, and in turn many people feel that they are insignificant or remain living in an environment based from fear of the establishment. Oftentimes, when people learn the truth of life that has been hidden from them, they come to the conclusion that the system of control in which we live is an indestructible entity, and do not wish to face their demons, or become stressed and overcome with a flood of negative emotions, and continue to allow the world to progress in a downward spiral due to their emotions based from these fears. This vicious cycle has been continuing for centuries, and will continue for future generations unless something is done to stop it. The key to this great change lies within the spirit, body, and mind of every single human being on the planet, and throughout history, all it ever took to change the course of the world was a single person's vision or actions. If this could be achieved on a greater level and include a majority of the population, the world could be transformed into a better place, and our children and future generations could live in harmony. It is hard to believe that humanity has not entered into this age yet, and the reason we have yet to achieve this monumental leap in evolution is simply because we are all a product of our environment. We live in a world in where profit is more important than life, and from the time we are born, we are expected to become a part of this society. It is hard to get employment in a field we enjoy and increase the potential of our lives at our jobs. Most jobs are simply a part of the corporate machine, and things like art, music, and other subjects geared to developing our potential are slowly disappearing from school curriculums and being replaced with industry-related studies. Laws, finances, and taxes are often not taught to children and must be taken in college and university to have a better understanding, and this in turn leads to people who are unaware of how the system works, keeping them in the dark so that they can assume their role in society. Government systems limit our potential for growth and consciousness by creating a negative world and keeping us in a state of fear and unknowing to the true fundamental realities of life. Many people become depressed because of this system, and others become addicted to drugs to cope, which destroys parts of the brain, leading to depression, sickness, inhibition, suicide, and death. The government also offers these addicts drugs through meth clinics, so that these people whom have become addicted remain on various drugs and become trapped in a cycle designed to limit their potential as human beings. When people become sick, the government and medical system prescribes drugs rather than promote natural methods of curing, because if someone gets better, there is no profit to be made. Pharmaceutical companies cannot stay in business by curing people, so natural methods of healing are neglected by the establishment. We live in a world where we are born to spend money and contribute to the system, and when we die, companies profit huge amounts of money from the families of those who have died. Our bodies are sealed and contained within a box or an urn, so that our physical materials cannot become a part of the living earth in which we are a part of. This stops the natural cycle carried out by all other life forms on planet Earth. Many people do not believe that they are connected with the earth or have an impact on their environment, but the truth of the matter is that all living things on this planet are connected, and through this awareness we are able to change the world in which we live. Through this knowledge, we can do what is necessary to make for a better world for future generations.
Mrs. Ritalik created two distinct environments for her test plants. Water levels were kept the same in both. Temperature and lighting were identical. Only one element was different. Semi-classical music was played into one, hard rock into the other. In the chamber with soft music, the plants leaned toward the speaker, seeming to draw strength from the melodious sounds. In the chamber with rock music, the plants shrank away and eventually died. Time-lapse photography represents the reactions of the plants over several days. The results are unmistakable. Test conditions could only mean that it was the quality of the music, not the volume, that determined the reaction of the plants.
The plants, it seems to me, are trying to tell us something.
If plants hear, how do they hear? Certainly there's nothing in the plant world like the human ear and mind, but perhaps there's something else. A way of hearing that doesn't involve receiving and interpreting sound waves. What we call a sound wave is merely one form of energy, but scientists know that energy takes many forms. Cleve Baxter has spent more than 25 years researching the behavior of plants.
All right, now we're going to use a pair of electrodes that are regularly used on people, but now are mounted between this C-clamp.
Baxter is a polygraph expert and has conducted lie detector tests for the Army and the CIA. The polygraph is essential to his work with plants.
This is a conventional piece of polygraph equipment of which we're using only 1/3, the galvanic skin response section. Now I'm going to activate the chart drive on the equipment and turn up the sensitivity and balance in the plant between these electrodes. Now, the tracing we're getting now represents the plant.
He calibrates the machine this time in hope of achieving a response from the plant to the cutting of Kay's hand with a scalpel.
You got a hand to spare? Right here? All right. Now, what I'm going to do is just to cut a little bit here. When you feel this, the thing that was going fairly calm is now going pretty wild. I think the plant is tuned into your apprehension pretty nicely. Now let's see if it's tuned into this. Now, I'm going to put some iodine in there.
This time, the results were positive. The plant has reacted in some way. Baxter can only conclude that it is a reaction to the pain felt by another living thing.
I mean, this is pretty powerful stuff that we're going over. I mean, there's no anthropologist or biologist on the planet who can explain this one. How the sunflower evolved a bunch of spirals in it. It's seed pod design, and how those spirals exactly lead to a golden ratio Fibonacci series numbers. Unbelievable. Okay, this is it. There's no question. I mean, we've all been lied to all through our undergraduate college degrees and our elementary schools and on our TVs just by them not discussing all this. I mean, you know how many examples I have here? There's so many, and they're all this powerful. Okay? And all this was hidden from us while we were in our schools learning about, what were we learning about? Plate tectonics theory. I mean, it's pretty sad case. And when it's so obviously everywhere in nature, it has to be a conspiracy in the satanic New World Order Illuminati system we live in. I guess they don't want you to know this stuff, because you might realize that this reality you live in is charged with Yahweh. The architect's fingerprint is absolutely everywhere, and it's in you. You are a piece of that fingerprint.
We think of a piece of steel as being solid, and according to our definition, it is a solid. But the popular concept of what makes a solid is certainly a false one. This piece of steel, and any so-called solid substance on this earth, is almost entirely empty space. If we could eliminate the empty space in this piece of steel, all that would remain would be a tiny bit of matter, so small as to be invisible even with a high-power microscope. This concept of almost unlimited empty space within matter is comparatively new, but it is the very cornerstone of our knowledge in this atomic age. Atoms are not solid. Instead, they are tiny solar systems composed of infinitely small particles revolving at tremendous speeds and bound together by enormous forces. And like our solar system, atoms are almost entirely empty space. For the moment, let's forget the forces within the atom. Thinking only of the particles and the empty space around them, science knows no reason why I couldn't take this so-called solid steel bottle and just throw it right on through that wall. Except this, we've tried it and it hasn't worked. If I were to attempt to run through that wall right now, all I'd get for my trouble would be a good-sized lump on the head. But that which would prevent my body passing through the wall would not be a collision of particles, but rather a collision of forces. The same forces that make an atom bomb. And if it were not for these forces, my body could go freely back and forth through that wall just as though it were not there. It is within the realm of scientific possibility that there could be two worlds coexistent, occupying the same part of space at the same moment of time, each world just as real as the other, with its mountains, valleys, rivers, trees, and people. And that one world could pass freely through the other world, neither world being conscious of the existence of the other world, if you grant just one thing. Atomic forces within the material substance of these two worlds that are not mutually interactive. What do we mean by this? Let's see. Here are two pieces of steel. Their appearance is quite similar, but a magnet will reveal a basic internal difference between the two pieces. This one, of course, is picked up. but this one is unaffected. This piece of steel is non-magnetic, stainless steel. Of course, we all know that other metals, such as brass or aluminum, are not affected by the magnet. But a ring made of aluminum is something else. It can be suspended in air by the electromagnetic force of what is actually a transformer. The ring being in effect a one-turn shorted secondary. A smaller ring will react even more violently. Here is another ring. This one made of a material we say is non-conductive. And it is completely unaffected. Here is another example. Several thousand watts of power were involved in that spark. If we replace the spark gap with a copper coil, the same power now flows through the coil. It's invisible, has no effect on many substances, but it can generate a lot of heat. Wood, paper, things that we think of as being quite inflammable are not affected at all. However, a piece of steel wool bursts into flame instantly. Did you ever fry an egg on a cold stove? It's no trick at all if you have the right equipment. This is a cold hot plate. And because it's cold, you can make it out of wood, if you like. Just be sure that there's a coil of wire inside and that you connect that coil to a high voltage alternating current source. The rest is easy. As long as we're being different, we'll use motor oil instead of Crisco. The egg fries very quickly, but the stove remains perfectly cold. In fact, if you wish to keep it handy, you can fry your egg on the morning newspaper. With a gadget like this, you can get up in the morning, sit on the stove, read the morning newspaper, and fry the eggs in your lap. Another example of the fact that physical forces can be quite selective in their effect. All of the examples which we have cited thus far have been in the physical realm, and of course have been limited by that fact. We can, however, cite examples that transcend the purely physical and clearly demonstrate the reality of these two worlds.
Well, it was interesting because I became a biologist, a developmental cellular biologist. I'm working on cells, of course, and in my graduate work I was cloning stem cells. And it's interesting because a lot of people think stem cells are something brand new that just came into this world recently, and the fact was I was cloning stem cells back in 1967, 40 years ago. And the significance was, while I was doing this research, I was also teaching medical students. So I was teaching medical students the foundation of how cells work, the conventional story out of the textbook, genes control life, what we call the genetic determinism, the belief that genes control your traits, behavior, your physical characteristics, etc. And what my research revealed when I was studying the stem cells was this, very profound. I put one stem cell in a petri dish all by itself, and it would divide every 10 to 12 hours. So it'd be 2, 4, 8, 16 cells, 32 cells. After about 2 weeks, I have thousands of cells in the petri dish, but what was unique? They were all genetically identical. But then I did the experiment. The experiment was to take some cells out of the dish and put them into a separate dish with a different environment. Okay. And so the environment is a culture medium, but the culture medium to cells is like the world that we live in. It's got the air, the water, the food, all the things in it. So I take the cells out of my stem cell dish, put them in a separate dish with a different environment, and the cells form muscle. But then I went back to the same dish with genetically identical cells in it and took some cells out and put them in a different environment, and they form bone. And then I went back to the same dish with genetically identical cells and put them in a third petri dish with a different environment, and they form fat cells. And there I was confronted with this reality. All the cells are genetically identical, but they had different fate: fat, muscle, bone. And I said, simple question, what controls the fate of cells? And the answer is the environment. It was the only thing that was different because they were all genetically identical. So I started to really say, oh my goodness, here I am teaching genes control life to the medical students. And yet the cells were revealing to me that, hey, they all had the same genes, but it was the environment that I put them in. And so the environment controlled their life. And a very simple experiment that is very profound for us today is, if I took my dish with plastic petri dish with cells in it and moved it from a healthy environment to a less than healthy environment, the cells get sick. And if I were a doctor of cells, you might say, well, what kind of drugs would you give these cells? And it turns out, no, you don't give the cells any drugs. You just take the dish from the bad environment, put it back into a good environment, and the cells will innately, naturally come back to health again.
So how did this realization impact you at the time? Because you were teaching something completely different.
Yes.
You did this experiment and you realized what you were teaching wasn't the full truth.
Oh, absolutely. And then I had a problem with my colleagues because, first of all, they doubted my work, and then I brought them into the experiments and I had them observe them, watch them, and they all said, wow, yeah, the environment controls the cells. But they wanted to marginalize it, so they would say, oh, that's an exception or an anomaly because we're teaching genetic control. It didn't fit the story. The net result, what it led me to do was, I had tenure. I had tenure at the university. I walked out of the university and said, look, I can't keep my integrity and at the same time teach something I know was patently wrong. So I walked out because I saw that teaching the belief that genes control life was very, very incorrect. And it's very interesting because I did that in 1970. Now that's like 40 years ago. And guess what? The new science that is just coming into the forefront of our world today is something called epigenetic control. What I was teaching was genetic control, control by genes. The new science, which is now coming around, is called epigenetic control. And what that means, you understand the prefix epi means above. So you say epidermis, that means the layer above the dermis skin. If I say epigenetic control, literally it says control above the genes. And this is the new science. And why is it profound? Because when you teach genetic control, you teach victimization. You didn't pick the genes as far as we know. The genes control your traits. You can't change the genes, so you become victimized by your heredity. And the new science, epigenetic control, reveals how your response to the environment, as you change your response to the environment, you change the fate of your cells, just like in the petri dish. That makes you a master, because you are the one that has the opportunity to change your perception and response, so therefore you're the one that controls your genes. Ancient philosophy talked about an end of time and a transformation of humanity. And while they could tell us about when this might occur, they really didn't underline why it would occur. Now we know why we are facing our imminent extinction on this planet, and coming to those prophecies and making them real, and that is this. We base our world on knowledge. Knowledge is power. Lack of knowledge is lack of power. Well, the knowledge that we've been operating with for many centuries, and the last couple hundred years specifically, the new scientific knowledge, is not actually found to be valid today, which means we've been operating from misperceptions, misbeliefs about the world comes. Well, the idea is very simply this: if you don't understand, if you have a misperception of the world, it can kill you. And so the significance, I'll give a simple example, is that if we had an anorexic person standing right here, and you and I looked at this anorexic person, we say, well, this person's near death, skin and bones. And we should ask them, what do they see when they look in the mirror? They say, well, I look in the mirror, I see this overweight, bloated person. And so they have a misperception. And what does the misperception lead to? It causes their brain to send chemistry to their body to reduce more weight. And because of a misperception, they're going to kill themselves. There was nothing wrong with their biology, it was their perceptions that were wrong. Well, we have three misperceptions that are causing our extinction. One is the belief that the material realm is all there is and all that matters, so that matter is all that matters. Number two is the belief that genes control our lives, which make us victims because we didn't pick the genes that can't change them and they have power over us. And the third one is an extension of Darwinian belief that says that the world is based on a struggle for survival. We all know about the rat race. And why is it a rat race? Because our fundamental belief is that if you don't go out there and fight to stay alive, you'll be trampled and killed. And so we see a world based on this Darwinian world, a nightmare of a struggle for survival, which involves war and competition and gouging each other, for each one climbing up on the back of another to stay alive. So what's wrong with these perceptions? Well, number one, the belief that matters is all that matters. That's a Newtonian belief. Quantum physics has come in and said, boy, did you make a mistake on that? It's not the physical matter that's most important. It's the invisible stuff you can't see, because it's the invisible fields, the energy fields, that shape matter in the same way that a magnet can cause the shaping of iron filings. So if you look at the structure of what's going on in here and blame it on the structure, no, you missed it. It's based on the invisible. But the biggest part of contribution to that invisible from us is our mind. Our minds are shaping the world. So whatever we believe is like a magnetic field that shapes our biology and our life to conform to the belief. So it says, wow, if that's true, then all of a sudden we should put more emphasis on the mind than on the body part. And that if we change our beliefs, then we can save our world. Myth number two was that genes control us, the belief of a victim. Again, cancer's in my family, what can I do about it? Might as well enjoy my life now. And all of a sudden we become irresponsible. Why? Because I said, well, if I can't control it, why do I care? And then irresponsible nature leads us to the extinction as well. The new science says, no, genes don't control your life, your mind controls your life. That your mind, acting through a new thing called epigenetic control, a new mechanism by which the environment or the perception of the environment controls our genetics, is what controls our heredity. And all of a sudden it says, well, then it means if you change your mind or your perception, then you change your biology. And the answer is absolutely. So you're a master of your life rather than a victim. And a third one that says, get all the matter you can, take it from the earth, rape the planet, gather it all in your yard because that's a measure of your success. Turns out, no, it's not. And the competition you use to gather all this matter is actually now found to be destructive, because evolution is based on a cooperation. When we look into the biosphere, it's all a balanced, harmonious community except for us, because our belief says it's a struggle. The plants and the animals behind me, they look at it as this is a garden for them. We're the only ones that are out of the garden by a misperception. Since perception controls life and misperceptions can kill you, then you recognize the fundamental misperceptions on which we base our civilization are the destructive elements leading to our extinction. And when the new beliefs come into the public, civilization will take a radical turn and move off into a new situation of thriving and harmony and holism. That's the dimension that we're going to. This is the end of the civilization of the old beliefs and the transition into the new one.
Our true consciousness does not exist in our brains or in our bodies. But this illusion of our individual bodies, along with the misinformation of our true origins, has manifested the idea that we all think independently from one another. With this misunderstanding, it would seem impossible to scientifically explain telepathy, clairvoyance, spiritual mediums, and other phenomena dealing with transferring information between sources without physical means of communication. But when you understand that there is a common spiritual bond between all things in the universe, and that we are all part of one divine intelligence, no phenomena is unexplainable. The blank matter within the most basic building blocks of perceivable existence is malleable and molded by intent. This means that consciousness shapes our reality. This seems difficult to accept for most, and it is quite understandable. In modern times, we are taught from an early age how to think rationally and tangibly. This is a very left-brain method of education, and it has more harmful effects than it's given credit for. The left brain deals with logic, details, facts, patterns, practicality, science, and math, as the right brain deals with feeling, intuition, symbols, images, risk-taking, philosophy, and religion. With a deliberate push for government-controlled educational curriculums, generation after generation of the youth are being taught to focus only on the facts, figures, and numbers. Repetition is used to train children subconsciously to accept what they're learning. Children aren't rewarded for questioning the validity of the information they receive. They are ridiculed. However, The children who blindly accept the information as true and merely regurgitate the information on command when it is time to take a test, those children go on to become the decision makers in our government, law, medicine, business, and every other occupation with power and prestige. The most detrimental effect of being pushed away from holistic thinking with the full brain into a strictly left brain thought is what is known as the suppression of the feminine. Every male and female have both feminine and masculine qualities. It has nothing to do with man or woman. These are represented by the left and right brain, yin and yang, black and white, light and dark, and most every other duality. Both are vital to our spiritual and physical health. So the intangible parts of our existence, such as emotions, are part of the true reality of higher consciousness. If emotions are part of a realm that we cannot experience with our five senses, then how is it that we are all aware of our emotions? What most people believe to be emotions are not truly the emotion itself. What we are experiencing is the physical manifestation of these emotions. Anger causes disturbance in the psyche, which manifests itself in the ego. These manifestations cause the heart rate to increase, body temperature to rise, and spawn many other physical traits that signify anger. Just as music from the radio is a physical manifestation of an intangible signal, our experience of emotion is the physical manifestation of an intangible signal as well.
Ron Sakeley, Department Chairman, Chemistry, University of California, Berkeley, showed that DNA acts as an antenna for cellular upregulation. The primary function they taught us about what DNA is about. It's a receiver and transmitter of photons, light and phonon sound. For what? Cellular upregulation, meaning that their water molecules, the pyramid power around the DNA spiral energizing strands, are taking in the spiritual energy of love vibrations and then sending it out for manifesting, precipitating in a quantum field, the physical matter of the body. These are hertz, frequencies, or cycles per second that the musicians can retune their instruments to play and experiment with. Why? Again, these are the Creator's musical scale, the original solfeggio, buried for 3,000 years in the Bible. So the ancient priests who knew how to levitate the huge stones for the building of the pyramids, and the Masonic knowledge that predated ancient Egypt, the ability to have this information, these frequencies, serve the function of creation, destruction, and miracles on behalf of the empowered people who had access to this knowledge. I say that because of this metaphor. This is the difference between the power of our Creator and anything else, particularly evil. That you can go into a pitch black room full of evil, full of darkness, and light a little candle, and instantly that darkness flees. But you can't do the opposite. You can't go into a well-lit room full of truth and wisdom and righteousness and joy and health and harmony with the universal power. You can't take any amount of darkness and go into that well-lit room and have any effect whatsoever. That is the metaphor which I frequently think of when I think that I'm not empowered. It is the greatest lesson for me, and I think for everybody else, to know that we're on the winning side and that we win in the end.
We have entered a new age in human development in which people are starting to wake up to the realities of life. It is the age of enlightenment, and many ancient cultures have described this era within their teachings. Many years ago, much of the new science would have been ridiculed or considered to be the theories and workings of the occult. However, the ancient knowledge passed on through the mystery schools is simply manifesting itself. Many secret societies and government organizations have suppressed this sacred wisdom to maintain total control over our spirits, bodies, and minds. It is quite unfortunate that many people live with a "if it's not happening to me or affecting me, then I don't care" mentality. These people fail to realize the collective consciousness of existence and distance themselves from the truths that have been hidden from us for centuries. Much blame is placed upon wrongful sources when, as always, the answers to our problems have existed within us all along. It has always been our consciousness that has shaped the course of history, and if we were to all work together to change our ways instead of contributing to a society based on conflict, struggle, and competition, our collective consciousness would manifest itself to change the overall mentality and development of the planet and of ourselves. The world we live in is designed to keep us thinking inside the box, and our way of living is meant to keep us distracted so that we do not care about the effects of control and the damaging effect it has on our minds. In World War II, Nazi scientists discovered a way to limit human potential without the victims knowing about it. These experiments proved that by administering fluoride into the water supply, people then became very passive, less aggressive, forgetful, and easily controllable. The fluoride affects a part of the brain called the pineal gland, which is responsible for producing melatonin and is considered to be a vital part of the brain responsible for our connection to the spiritual realm. It is not as common in Europe. However, fluoride can be found in the drinking water supply of most North American cities and several other countries around the world. It is important that we address the issue of contaminating our food and water supply, because this has a much greater effect on us than one might think imaginable.
The fluoridation of the US's water supply has been going on for over 50 years. There has never been any testing on what it actually does to the pineal gland of the brain before 1990. Let's take a look at what the pineal gland is and what it does. The pineal gland, also called the pineal body, epiphysis cerebri, epiphysis, or the third eye. It produces melatonin, a hormone that affects the modulation of wake, sleep patterns, and photoperiodic, or seasonal functions. It is and is located near to the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, tucked in a groove where the two rounded thalamic bodies join. The pineal gland is reddish-gray, shaped like a tiny pine cone, and about the size of a pea, 8 millimeters in humans. It is often seen in plain skull X-rays, as it is often calcified. Calcification is typically due to intake of the fluoride found in water and toothpaste. Now we know it is shaped like a pine cone and is the size of a pea, and fluoride calcifies it. Let's go back to where it mentions the third eye and see what that means. The third eye, also known as the inner eye, is a mystical and esoteric concept referring, in part to the ajna, brow, or chakra, in certain Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. It is also spoken of as the gate that leads within to inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness. In New Age spirituality, the third eye may alternately symbolize a state of enlightenment, or the evocation of mental images having deeply personal spiritual or psychological significance. The third eye is often associated with visions, clairvoyance, precognition, and out-of-body experiences, and people who have allegedly developed the capacity to use their third eyes are sometimes known as seers. The true function of this mysterious gland has long been contemplated by philosophers and spiritual adepts. Ancient Greeks believed the pineal gland to be our connection to the realms of thought. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. This gland is activated by light, and it controls the various biorhythms of the body. It works in harmony with the hypothalamus gland, which directs the body's thirst, hunger, sexual desire, and the biological clock that determines our aging process. When the pineal gland awakens, one feels a pressure at the base of the brain. This pressure will often be experienced when connecting to higher frequency. A head injury can also activate the third eye. while the physiological function of the pineal gland has been unknown until recent times. Mystical traditions and esoteric schools have long known this area in the middle of the brain to be the connecting link between the physical and spiritual worlds. I used to think, just how far down the foxhole do I need to go to find out exactly what it is that is being hid and what is it they want from us, when all I had to do all along was to look in the other direction, behind my eyes, in the center of my brain, to see it. It all makes perfect sense now.
The dream world, or the ethereal, plays a very important role in all of this and has been a sacred part of nearly all ancient cultures found throughout history. As we discussed earlier, we spend a large portion of our lives sleeping or in altered states, and the rest of the time we are awake in what we consider consciousness. It is to my belief that there are two dimensions of actual reality based upon my research and experiences: the waking world and the ethereal, or the dream world. Our mind and soul are a part of the ethereal, and our body, mind, and soul are a part of the physical world. As we grow older, we become more connected to this dream world, and when our body dies, our memories, experiences, and soul continue in our dream world, and our physical materials join with the cycles of nature that exist on the earth. When we dream, we are experiencing an out-of-body experience, and many ancient cultures realized this and described it in similar detail. Evidence of this seems to exist within the practice of astral projection, where frequencies of the brain are leveled using binaural beats or certain drugs, and an altered dreamlike state of consciousness occurs, where the soul leaves the body to travel, and we are aware of what we are doing and can control the dream. This state of consciousness is not always obtainable, which is why many people do not experience the phenomenon. However, by using binaural beats and other methods, achieving a positive outcome becomes more likely. From my own personal experiences, I have traveled to many places in my dreams, including distant galaxies and planets, and have even been able to learn things or come up with new ideas as a result. Many people have accredited inventions or theories to their dreams, including Albert Einstein, Carl Jung, and Stephen King's novels. The dream world seems limitless. However, it is hard for most people to remember their dreams, and some don't remember any at all. Since we spend much of our lives within the dream state, it is very important that we try to connect to this realm and apply it to our lives while we are awake. By tuning into this other dimension of our existence, it can change who we are as human beings, and as a direct result, have an impact on the world that we live in. Although things like water fluoridation and contaminating foods has a direct effect on our brains and likely our ability to connect with our spiritual side of life, by identifying the problems that exist in our world and then approaching the problem is the only way we are able to make a difference for future generations. Secret societies and ancient teachings have had a keen interest in the study of the occult and the spirit world because they know of the importance of this aspect, and is also one of the reasons there has always been an attempt to control and manipulate the spirit, body, and mind of unwitting people. Governments have been experimenting on people for a very long time, and have long since learned the techniques and methods on how to gain total control of someone. We have entered the new age, an age of realization, and an age of revelations. People are starting to wake up and understand that for centuries we have been ruled by hierarchy, abused, suppressed, and generally disregarded. Many people have used violence to try and break free from this system, or protested to demand change for a better future. Most of these attempts proved unsuccessful, and so we now sit at a pinnacle in human history, where in order to make a positive change on the earth, we must first look within and make a change inside of ourselves, and as a collective entity, we can address the problems that face the human race. Now that we are aware of the matrix of fear that has been put in place to keep us from achieving great potential, we can contribute to the world in a loving and positive reflection. We must approach our world leaders with the knowledge necessary to justify our opposition and demand that we make the changes necessary to create an existence of longevity and continued renewal and purity. The power of light is much greater than the forces of evil, and it's time that we remove the blindfold that has been placed upon us and protect the children of the future from the repeated mistakes and misfortunes that have been allowed to occur for centuries past. This change begins within the individual, within yourself, and within the spirits, bodies, and minds of the entire planet. It's time to stare into the eye of the Illuminati, without fear and with great conviction, and the power of our belief shall overcome this obstacle. I hope that this information has been useful to you all, and a complete puzzle has been formed within your mind. Please share this information and teach our children the important factors in life, for it is in not only our hands, but that of the future generations. We cannot continue to allow this system to determine the fate of our planet, and it's time we wake up to a new world of realization and use our full potential.
The dictator of Turmania, the conqueror of Austerlitz, the future emperor of the world.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men, with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
What?
Oh, really?
God, the inside of the hoodie, everybody. Take a look. What is it? Making the
world more open and connected.
Oh my God, it's like a secret vault. Look at that, making the world open and connected, stream, graph, platform, and this weird symbol in the middle that is probably for the Illuminati.
Confide in me and tell me why the worthless never die. And tell to me, my darling, why we cast our pearls to swine. Please come to me and show me why the dead refuse to bleed. Why nothing lasts forever and the past can be retrieved. I am the Alpha, I am the Omega, I am the beginning and the end. I am the answer, I am the enigma, I am the flame which never ends. No love will ever save you, no kisses are too deep. No cross will give you answers or satisfy your needs. No faith will give you pleasure that takes away the pain. But hate will give you meaning and make you feel again. I am the Alpha, I am the Omega, I am the beginning and the end. I am the answer, I am the enigma, I am the flame which never ends.
I believe in the light
when I lay down not to sleep. Hell is where the heart is. It's a place where you and me